Because of the following special program, Mr. Merlin will not be presented this evening.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Coming February 21st, it's Faye and the Moon, the latest graphic novel from Franco and the Saturn Sisters. Faye, mourning for her missing mother, sits night after night below the moon that her mother loved dearly. One night she discovers she can pluck the moon out of the star-filled sky. Back safe in her house, she holds it close, feeling comfort at last. Then Faye loses the moon and finds that taking it has awakened ancient monsters, rats, dragons, and more, who hunt for it for themselves. Will Faye be able to reclaim the moon, find her own inner strength, and save the world from eternal darkness? Faye and the Moon comes from the minds of Franco, whose works include Tiny Titans, Superman of Smallville, Archimaniacs, Itty Bitty Hellboy, and The Ghost and the Owl, and art from the Saturn Sisters, whose animated works include Sesame Studios' The New Neighbors, Hulu's The Awesomes by Seth Meyers, and PBS's Mira, Selkie from the Sea. Pre-order Faye and the Moon now. Available in bookstores and comic shops everywhere, February 21st.
This portrait of Jean Grey, the Phoenix, is one of the ones I did for a series of single frame mock-up kind of covers for the Marvelocity book, where my concept was it would work like an accordion. When you open up the book, getting past the initial Captain America cover, you would fold it out and you get Iron Man and character after character after character, and it allowed me then to do multiple Marvel character portraits. Phoenix being one of the most primary Marvel concepts, because her storyline back in 1980, the invention of that character, that maturation of Jean Grey into the Phoenix, was one of the best storylines in the history of comics and stands out as one of the most important female superheroes.
Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I'm always happy to welcome Sal from Comic Pop. It's good to see you, man. It's been a while since we've seen each other.
It's true.
And as always, I'm happy when you're back because we get to talk about fun stuff.
It's true. Yeah. No, who knows where this episode will take us? I'm very excited about it.
Well, and your peeps always come out, Sal. I mean, I can tell right away. I mean, already we got great comments.
Oh, sure.
Some of our mutual peeps, like Ivan.
Oh yeah,
and Langley is here, which is great.
Yes, hey man, yeah, no, it's great.
Very cool.
I love seeing that Alex Ross bumper. I mean, all the bumpers were terrific, but the Alex Ross one was great because I'm like, wait a minute, that Marvelocity book, I have that book. Does it have an accordion thing? Does that actually open up? I've only opened the book to read it. I've never actually opened the dust cover. That's awesome.
It does. Brian, I agree. Ross is such a talent. Full Circle, the FF book, gorgeous book. I had the pleasure of talking to Alex about it, and also I had his model for Reed Richards. I thought it was Anson Mount from Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, for Pike. It's Gary Conway, who my old school love of old school sci-fi. The great Irwin Allen show, Land of the Giants.
Yes.
And that guy's in his 80s. He still looks great.
Yeah.
He is still sharp. And he was also, I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. And he wrote, and we didn't have a chance to talk about it yet. I'm begging him to come back. He wrote the arm wrestling Stallone movie, Over the Top.
Oh, Over the Top. Yes. Infamous. I've never actually had the strength to watch it all the way through, but I was always very, excited by that cover. I was like, is this really an arm wrestling movie? And then the internet thankfully shows me a couple of the greatest clips, and I'm like, this is probably as much as I could ever stomach watching of this movie. Just the funny parts, because that
they're all funny parts, man. Come on, absolutely.
All right, good to know.
I was working in adult contemporary radio. I was a DJ.
Yeah,
and then back then the the theme song of the movie was done by Kenny Loggins, and it's called "Meet Me Halfway."
Yes.
And it's this sappy, good, Sal. I'm glad you remember.
Oh, I know it. Yeah, only because of the movie, but
and I would refer to it as the love theme from Over the Top.
I love it. Yes. The 80s were really good at power ballads and love themes between two muscular men. That was a very much a big theme in the 80s, was just this unrequited, very superficial kind of homoerotic. This is the movie. I mean, Top Gun. That's all I have to say. You just
exactly.
Like, okay, I see what you mean.
Shirtless men playing volleyball. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all.
By the way, either. I mean, it's all. That's
awesome.
It's all asterisks come down.
All right, Christmas, the day of Christmas Day, that night on, I'm assuming it was TNT back in the day.
Sure.
They're showing Rocky 3. And you got, it was Rocky 4.
Okay.
And they're showing the Rock video portion, the song No Easy Way.
With the robot and all the
Robert Tepper and all that.
Uh-huh.
And Briggs comes back from that sequence. And he goes, "All right, there you go. A lot of flashbacks of Rocky 4. It's like probably the most homoerotic moment of all the Rocky movies.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of
Clubber on the beach, from 3.
The beach scene. Yeah, I'm like,
okay, running against each other.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot. Well, there's a lot of it's funny. It's very Grecian, Greco-Roman, you might say. It's like, they really want to compete with each other, and also you could tell there's just this desperate need to kiss. Maybe.
Sal, we should refer when you and I podcast together as Greco-Roman nerd talk.
Yes,
because I'm Greek and you're Italian.
That's right. Oh my God, yes.
So there we are, man. Yes.
Yeah, we've got the makings of an Olympiad going on here.
Do you now again? All right, forgive me, man. I can't help it. It's just the goofy shit when we were kids.
Yeah,
those Italian sword and sandal movies were all packaged as the Sons of Hercules.
Yes, I do. I only knew them by reputation, like as a small boy going to a lot of secondhand stores and always gravitating towards anything geeky and nerdy, because when we were kids, especially, it was like a ghost town period. You got Migos, right? I didn't even get the Migos. Migos had already come and gone.
Yeah,
Wizard Magazine scooped up all of them and gave them to the Toy Fair people by that point. When I was going, it was just like the dust. It was like the Dust Bowl. You're just going through, finding anything. All I wanted was a good Robin figure, and I could get maybe the Kenner Superpowers one with the chop. But I remember finding a suction cup on a string, frozen in pose Robin that I really enjoyed. But that was when I would see tapes and things like Sons of Hercules. I'd be like, okay,
yeah.
Never looking for that. It was always because I grew up on things like Wizard Magazine and stuff. I was aware of the Star Wars Holiday Special, and every time I find because every time you go to a secondhand store, or a yard sale, or a dirt mall, you'd find just mountains of VHS tapes, and I'm like, all right, let's see if the Fantastic Four Roger Corman movie's in here. Little did I know they were all available, but at cons, which I didn't even get to until New York Comic Con. That was my first actual convention ever. My grandmother had been to more Comic Cons before me, and comic books at all. No, she went because she had heard there was going to be a comic book thing. She lived in Brooklyn, and she was like, "Oh, I heard there's a comic book thing in my church. Are there any comic books for me to pick up?" And of course, I'm a child in the 90s, so I'm like, yeah, Spawn #1, Spawn #9, Shadowhawk #3, this really terrible list from my grandmother. And so she went, and I can imagine that was back then a Comic-Con in Brooklyn. There's a non-0% chance Stan was there. I mean, it was early 90s, 93, 94. Jack might have been there, Jim Aparo was there doing sketches. And I'm none the wiser,
Dude, so hear you.
Right?
Yes. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. I'm so glad in the early 2000s, I got a lot of my commission art when it was still affordable.
Oh, yeah.
And I got a Norm Brayfogle Batman. Or actually, I commissioned him, can you do, because I'd never seen him draw Superman, really.
Yeah.
And I'm like, would you do Superman? And God bless him, because he was like, well, what do you want Superman to do? You don't just want him to stand there, hands on hips.
Lift, break.
And I thought about it. I'm like, well, I wanted to make it simple for him and not think of like multiple characters or coming out of a building or whatever. I'm like, have him react to a piece of kryptonite.
Oh, like,
and it's great, and he's got him exactly, absolutely. And it was great. It was ready, and he goes, "Hey, I did this other commission. It's like," he goes, "it's based on a Batman cover, but I kind of smudged a couple of the bats with wet fingers.
Yeah.
I'll give it to you for $40." I'm like, done.
Oh,
and I got that at the same show. Mike Kaluta on a comic book backboard drew a shadow for me on with a Bic ink pen.
Oh, sure.
And I got Mike Grell did a Green Arrow and a headshot of the Flash. They're all hanging on my walls.
Yeah,
you could see right there the corner of the Spider-Man daily strips that I got from Alex Saviak. And that's the thing. I got these things when they were like under $100.
That's the thing, man. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Alex Saviak. I saw him at like the Garden State Comic Fest like 2-3 years ago. You want an original sketch from Alex Saviak? It's gonna be like $500, and I'm like, that's never gonna happen, my friend.
Wow. Yeah.
I hear you, and I think it's worth it. And it's funny, like when we lament missing out on those things, like, oh, I wish I had been around during the period when they didn't know what they were worth. Because that's really what it is. Like these artists, like they know what they're worth now.
Right now they know, but also, they were getting top dollar for the moment 20 years ago, and it is what it is. I mean, I have a Gene Colan Blade that cost me under $100.
That's nice, man.
Yeah, I'm lucky, man. I'm lucky.
I had a friend who was I'd say more into comics than me. He certainly had more comics than me when we were growing up. We didn't know each other. We both went to the same comic book store, but like ships in the night. I would never saw him. And I actually remember my comic book retailer making fun of him to me 10 years before I ever met him and talking about him. He's like, listen, like, you're doing okay. You don't want to be like this other kid who's doing this thing. And he describes him. And then years, like 10 years later, I'm like hanging out with him and our mutual friend, and our mutual friend starts bagging on him because my comic book retailer is going like, like this kid who comes in here, like, look, you come in here, you buy 2 books, you buy 2 books a week, you have other interests, you're playing softball, you're doing your thing, like, God bless. But there's this other kid who comes in here and he buys like a stack of comic books, and he made his mother get prescription glasses to look like Spider Jerusalem's glasses, where one's red and one's green. And so I didn't know who Spider Jerusalem was at the age of like 11 or 9. And so again, like a good 6-7 years later, I'm talking to my friend, and he goes, and we're all talking about how nerdy we are, and one of them, and my buddy goes, well, this guy over here, he made his mother get him prescription glasses that were red and green. Why? Were you trying to have 3D vision? And I'm like, you're the nerd.
Hilarious.
That our comic book store guy made fun of. That's you. But the reason I didn't bring it up is because he and I had gone through his collection at one point, and he didn't have any bags and boards. And so he just ripped through every comic book store in the area, bought all the bags and boards, bagged and boarded all of his comic books, finally. And while we're going through his collection, finding comic book backs with like a profile image of Batman by Jim Aparo or Saviak drawing. Like, he went to these cons that I didn't even know existed. And he has all these beautiful, incredible pieces of art that were just crammed between books. And I'm like, why? What? And because he was a kid, he was like 8, 9 walking around free.
Right.
It had to have been like, you're like an 8-year-old. Yeah, I'll drop Batman. Knock your here you go, kiddo. This will knock your socks off. Damn.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. But what are you gonna do, man?
Oh no, God bless.
People are flying with questions right now, bud.
Oh,
and that's great because I'm glad. I'm gonna start with the essay question because honestly, I disagree with the premise. Oh, where the hell is it, Tevye? You said it, and essentially it was. I'm sorry, I can't find it to put on the screen. Here it is. I think. Nope. He wants to know, can Marvel or DC be saved?
Oh, well, they don't need saving.
And thank you. I agree, Sal. I'm liking the current product of both companies. I think there's a lot of great stuff to read. My only concern is that the single issue price is out of control.
It is out of control. It's funny. I've talked about this now. I shot an episode of our flagship show Back Issues where we talked about Marvel. And
yes, of course.
It's coming out soon. Yeah, Bill Jemis's.
And who's the artist again?
Oh, Martin.
No. Well, I'm thinking of the covers. Shame on me.
Oh, yeah. No, the Greg Horn covers.
Greg Horn covers. But I don't even remember the interiors. Go on.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was.
Boy, that was I'm sorry, I tried, but that was just such a goofy.
It was a rough
shit.
That was a rough book. But I talked about it on there, and then I talked about it on. I have a show now with Josh Williamson where we once a month just shoot the crap, talk about comic books and stuff. And I talked about it there too. So you'll be hearing me talking about Marvel a lot. But it's funny that Marvel happened because they dared to increase the price of Captain Marvel by 25 cents. And that's really where it all happened, right? Because like Peter David had heard and like that they were going to raise the price of Captain Marvel because Captain Marvel was like selling poorly, and God knows what the number for selling poorly was in 1999, 2000. But I remember according to his blog post, but I digress. He mentioned that, he was willing to take a pay cut to offset the cost of the 25-cent increase. And I'm just like, I'm thinking about David. I think he ran the subscriptions for Marvel for a while, like years before that. Like,
I think
dude
you're right.
Knows the business. And especially in like the late 90s when he's surrounded by people who are new to Marvel Comics, he knows that like 25 cents is going to hurt the book. Like, and he knows how to offset the cost. And if he knew it then, then I'm surprised there aren't a lot of people who are like in the know now about how the industry works and how much things should be and how much you're asking of your audience by charging $6-7 per issue on like monthlies. But we're in an interesting place where like, the trade game is good, better than ever. The floppy game is really more of a collector's market, but still enough to warrant the production of books. And, like, and then there's digital, which,
what?
Digital's in the toilet. And,
is it in the toilet?
Sales are bad in digital. And they always have been. And
I hear what you're saying, I guess. I don't know, man. I think the issue still with supply chain might force and God, we saw during COVID good miniseries that weren't going to be top sellers get canceled.
Oh yeah.
Matt Rosenberg's Hawkeye series, Midway, things like that. And that's like the Wheeze is like, well, how can you say they're not in trouble? And I'm like, well, here, Luis says, John, I love Marvel and DC, but to deny the fact they're fine and don't need help. Well, first of all, man.
Well, yeah.
They're the comic end of the business is really small compared to licensing, certainly movies and TV. So it is what it is. And I could see them pull back potentially with titles. We'll get to DC in a minute.
Right.
But and I do think, and I agree with I think it was also Weeze that said, it's getting to the point where, it's tough to pay talent because of the low returns and stuff. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, it depends on who you're talking about, right? Because, like, notoriously, Marvel likes to save $1. DC a little more, open and willing. Then you have other companies that I don't want to throw shade because they're such like. You imagine somebody saying, "Oh, I want to open a comic book store, or I want to start a comic book publishing company. What is one sentence of advice?" And I'd be like, I'll pare it down to one word, and it's don't. Because no one got into the comic book industry to become a millionaire.
Right.
And like, that doesn't mean the comic book industry is dying, is in trouble even, because it never was. It's not like there was ever a time except for artificially inflated times, the same way that, you compare the video game industry became this like ballooned, juggernaut, if you will, that rivals the movie industry. In fact, I believe it's dwarfed the movie industry at this point by revenue.
Yes.
But gone, I think, are the days of like the Lamborghini driving programmers, because they've become studios now that are like, they bring in, millions, they make billions, but they still pay their programmers crap. And, it's like every major industry, but like you compare, but I like to compare, like the early days of id Software, like John Romero, Carmack and stuff like that, those guys driving Lamborghinis because it's a crew of 4, and you look at like Image Comics during like the the boom era,
Right, their moment,
Liefeld.
yeah.
Like just ask Liefeld to tell you a story about like his expensive cars, about the money that was like coming in hand over foot, but artificially inflated, not genuine. I mean,
Well,
the money
everyone,
was real.
as you know the history,
Yeah,
everyone was, the speculation market was ridiculous.
exactly.
And everyone thought they were going to put their kids through college with their Doctor Strange 1990 #1.
Well,
and it's, it's a fallacy, obviously.
Well, and their Prophet #1, and their Stormwatch #1, and their Supreme #1, like, and
Billy Tucci had a party on an aircraft carrier,
right, exactly,
because he could,
like, unsustainably prosperous. You can't compare the 80s, 90s, 2000s, like the 80s, the 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s to that like 3-year window of the 90s. And that's the selective like memory that anyone who's has some kind of vested interest in arguing with the comic book industry and whether it's solvent or not has to go on. That or inflated numbers about that are very case by case basis. Like you don't want to just you can't compare the bottom line of Marvel or DC because A, you don't know it, B, you don't have the access to it, C, you don't understand how much like is going in and how much is going out. You don't even know how much these creators are getting paid. So if you don't like standing about arguing how much these industries are making and how well they're doing, then don't bother. Just you want to talk about how well the comic book Kickstarter industry's going. That's an argument I can't have because I don't know it as well.
I can talk about that, and I think that has been the great thing and especially we saw it during COVID when everyone was, in this pencils down moment. A lot of creators they all got industrious.
Well,
did a bunch of creator-owned stuff, and through Kickstarter and the other crowdfunding platforms, or other
Substack
platforms as well, and certainly, Substack was its own thing because it was. Here's a pile of cash.
Yes.
We want you to create a community that will use our platform.
Exactly. That
and really
artificial.
And it was a small window. And I have asked creators now that they are in year 2 of those things, a lot of them have not received that initial seed money that they got in the first place. And that's fine. Everyone knew it wasn't going to last forever.
I think so many of us knew that like the Substack thing was, they had investor cash that they were able to spend on talent. They hoped that talent would bring in subscribers. I think on some level they did.
Yeah.
Any of those. The funny thing is, the comic book industry is so small and so insular that, and as you know, I know I'm not really like we're talking, but like I'm not.
You're doing this for the audience, buddy. I'm nodding along, agreeing with you.
The comic book industry is so small that like when you offer a comic book one writer, just a big old check from a tech investment firm, it's going to be a game changer, and it'll influence them to create things like 3 Worlds, 3 Moons, or any number of creations from our favorite creators out there.
Yeah.
And if they are to generate some essentially Patreon, because that's what Substack more or less is, just through them, that like capitalizes on a fandom and gives them a reward for subscribing with money, then any number is a windfall because it was money that had not existed before that now exists today, and it's a consistent basis, especially if it's consistently reciprocated. So like that's great. And even if we're not talking in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, any number like if you were a amateur YouTuber and you just were able to monetize and you make a little show and it brings you 25, $50 a month, that's 25, $50 a month. It's better than a sharp stick in the eye. I'll take it, but you can't say like, oh, well, like you're a failed YouTuber because you only make 25, $50 a month. That's proportionately speaking. I put in a certain amount of hours and time. I make a certain amount of money. If I increase that, like to think that I'd increase that other thing too. But if I don't, these are just the numbers we're talking. And it's the same way with the comic book industry, where it's like, you just because the comic book industry doesn't reflect the industries that you're more familiar with because people were more open about how they worked, like how do we know when a movie makes money? Because like there was a Variety article 25, 30 years ago that said you got to double the budget. And if you make more than double the budget, then the movie turned a profit. That's all we have to go on. But like they were more open about it. The comic book industry is very notoriously close to the chest and tight-lipped about like how things work, how they make money, where the money goes, how much things cost. So like to say the comic book industry is in peril, prove to me you even know what the baseline is for the comic book industry.
Right. Well, and again, as to quote Hickman, and this is one of my favorite Hickman quotes.
Yeah.
Even though all these comics are on the shelf at your local store, they're on the shelf for different reasons.
Yes.
And certainly in the case of DC and Marvel, they're not loss leaders. They want to see a profit from their publishing end. But that said, it's a small piece of the pie compared to the movies, compared to TV. And really the real money, the licensing, the birthday cakes, the bed sheets, all the toys, and that's another thing, Sal. And it's so funny because I watched the opening. I haven't watched this week's Flash yet, but I watched the first episode. And this is great because I know you guys at Comic Pop especially were very granular with metal.
Yes.
And that's great because and really I like Scott a lot, Snyder.
He's great.
I like Josh a lot, but I even confessed to Josh, I'm like, I'm sorry, I was at a loss. Yeah. It was just too much shit. And one of the reasons why, and I didn't say this to Josh, but I'm assuming this to be the case, a lot of comics are made to make toys. Let's be honest. I mean, really, and in fact, the way the Flash ended that first episode, and you saw that bloody bat signal.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I know Batwoman's coming, and I know whatever. And I had to read, and it's like, oh, that's the evil Batman that was part of Metal, where all these Justice League characters were demonic. I don't know what they were.
Oh, you're talking about the Batman Who Laughs is going to be on the
No,
Flash?
it's not the Batman Who Laughs. It's Red.
Red Death.
Red Death. Okay,
that was
good.
a Josh Williamson creation. Yeah, Red
what?
Death.
I'm like an old man. What is that? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know Red Death.
Yeah,
but and it's like I'm like, oh, okay, it was for Metal, and I thought about it, and I'm like, well, of course, a lot of those characters, and I think Josh would admit it. I think Scott would admit it.
Created for the.
Yeah, I learned the phrase in the last 10 years, toyetic.
Toyetic is toyetic. I think was coined by our good friends like Avi Arad, Ike Perlmutter, Bill Jemis, folks who came from toys and cards, who are like, how can I generate revenue by making toys of those things? It's funny because we know, just based on tell-all books and behind-the-scenes articles, and because the comic book industry is small enough, you get anybody who was an editor, associate editor on a podcast, or interviewed in like the Comics Bulletin, they'll tell you the whole damn story. So you could actually get a pretty good breakdown of how the comic book industry works, but you have to do it from like doing a lot of research on it. But we do know that like the Marvel people during the bankruptcy era were very toy minded, but we also know that the people who were in charge of Marvel were from Toy Biz. Like they were toy people. Like Ike Perlmutter came from Toy Biz. The people who run Marvel are toy manufacturers who became comic book publishers. And so I don't, not that I bristled, but I was certainly questioning the idea that like that like comic books made today are made to create fodder for toys. And I only question it because I wonder who's getting a piece of the pie. Like if because you hear it from every comic book creator worth their salt. They go, at some point or another, I'm going to leave capes and tights comics because why am I busting my butt creating something that I will never see a return on. And so it's like, why would I make a character for the sake of making a toy that I'm never going to see a return on, unless there is a return, of course. And I've made very vocal accusations at certain creators for overproducing original characters in the vain hopes that they'll appear on Gotham or in The Flash or something like that. And I think that's only because in the last 20 years, like, rights splits and revenue opportunities have opened up in ways that, like, in the 70s and 80s, they wouldn't even thought, like, no, just characters were used and it was just because it was owned by the company and no one even thought about getting a return. Like,
Right.
Can you imagine? I could imagine. I wish we could have ever talked to him at some point, but Len Wein, can you imagine how much he probably would have gotten from a Swamp Thing movie now versus the Adrian Barbeau Swamp Thing movie of yesteryear?
No, you're right. And thank God, as you well know, and I think I just talked about this recently on a show, or at least to a friend, Hugh Jackman kind of guilting Marvel to take care of Len when it comes to Wolverine. And if people don't know, it was at the premiere, I believe, of Logan.
Oh.
And literally Hugh Jackman is like, I would not be standing here today if it weren't for that man right there in the front row, Len Wein, everybody. And it's like, this guy needs to get paid.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, thank God, before he passed away,
yeah,
Len got a check. Nowhere near what he deserved.
No.
But at least he got a significant something. And we've seen Ed Brubaker talk about creating the Winter Soldier.
Oh, yeah.
And getting a handshake and $5,000. And that's a bunch of shit.
Oh,
and we know that. But, it's been interesting.
Yeah.
I just had Jurgens on, Dan.
Oh, yeah.
A couple weeks ago. And obviously, we're all excited for Dan for Booster Gold.
Yes.
That's great. And I mean, again, Sal, I'm older than you. I remember when Booster Gold was brand new.
Right.
Loved it from day one. And it's like, and I always say this to all the older creators. I'm like, I don't mean to like get involved in your business, and I certainly don't want to look like I'm being nosy.
Yeah.
But we're all worried about you guys. Are you getting paid? And and I know that DC, unlike Marvel, and I knew this was the case back in the Levitz days,
yes.
But even since then, there I know there's one lawyer in particular that a lot of the guys use where it's like, by the way, that's my character on Flash. Shoot the money to me, honey. And I've heard various stories. I won't name creators. In the case of Dan's like, no. They've when my characters show up, I get money. And
right.
Another character who I won't name said, when they're on TV, it's nice supplemental income. It's an extra check a month or whatever it is, but it's not life-changing. It isn't life-changing.
No, I don't think any of them get life-changing money for anything, even if it, I mean, look at Jim Starlin. Thanos was the culmination point of the entire trillion-dollar industry that was the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, certainly. But got paid more for DC work that appeared in other things than he ever did. And I would like to imagine, and I don't know this for certain, but I'd imagine that Jim Starlin is paid more in royalty checks for appearing in Endgame than for any creations than he will ever get for Adam Warlock.
Right.
No, in Guardians.
Yeah. Well, and it was it's a work for hire situation.
Right. And they knew that. That's the thing.
Yes. And it was a different business 50 years ago when Jim was creating Thanos and Adam Warlock and the like and Marvel Cosmos. No, I so hear you.
Right.
This is interesting. Kenneth says, I wish more comic book creators would get paid for their work when it's shown on screen.
Yes.
Sorry, something just popped up. There we go. In live action, Alex Ross's situation with the CW Crisis crossover was a bad apple of a situation not get paid. Incorrect. Alex did get paid. Alex rattled some cages. Forgive me, everybody, but I am proud to say DC saw Alex on my show complaining, and they're like, we owe you money. I don't know how much, but he got something.
Good.
And that really was great. And it's like, hey man, no, or I even know, and again, now I won't name names, but one of the CW ancillaries, like side heroes, was cited to be a younger creator's creation. And actually a Bronze Age creator is like, no, that was me.
Yeah.
And that was pre-Crisis, and that's my character. Sorry, we made a mistake. They paid the Bronze Age creator.
Good. Good.
So, again, it's so, oh, by the way, let me tease.
Yeah.
Tuesday morning, our time, like 10 your time, 9 my time, I'm going to talk to Dave Gibbons because he's got his autobiography coming out.
Oh, that's great.
And everybody needs to pick this up, and I will not spoil it either in my interview or now. But Dave finally is coming out with all the machinations that DC was going through, both during the 80s and during the before Watchmen period, of what was offered, the conversations he had with Dan and company, him talking to Alan Moore. This is what they're offering. I'm only telling you because you'll take my call, unlike taking Dan DiDio's call. And it is so, I really feel for Dave. Because Dave is, as you might know, one of the
I've met him once, and he's a lovely man. Like, he was super friendly.
Guys. Yes. Great guy. And he's always been incredibly kind to me in the 15 years I've gotten to know him.
Yeah.
And really, man, you feel for him because he was really put in this awkward position of, again, like, this is the money they're offering. I'm not happy, but, they really want to know that at least the message is getting to you. And Moore wasn't interested. I'll say that much. It's an incredible story, among others. This autobiography that he wrote, it's anecdotal. And it's also alphabetically anecdotal. So here's a Batman story under the bees. Here's a Before Watchmen story under the bees. And it's in our story. Well, Rogue Trooper, one of his 2000 AD gigs. It's really, really great. And I'm very excited to talk to him.
I love it.
Now, RLC, you're asking when the book comes out. I believe it comes out at the beginning of March. I would check Amazon to confirm. And it might be different country to country, because I'm like, do you want to wait till March? He's like, no, I want to talk now. And I'm like, all right, great. So that's coming up 9 my time, 10 Eastern time. So that's, let me do the math, 7 a.m. Pacific time. So maybe I'll catch it before work, all you guys and women on the West Coast.
Yeah, watch it on watch it on your way home or on your way to work, right?
Absolutely, man. So, here's a good question for you. So, what's the best episode of Back Issues you've done? Any favorites?
Well, if you're familiar with the show, I produce a show where I explain comics to two people who don't have context for them. That concept baffles and upsets people apparently sometimes, but not so much that I don't get paid for it, and I'm very happy to do it. But it's interesting. I get this question a lot, and the question is tough to answer because I've made almost 500 episodes of the show, and they kind of all blend together after a while. But they all have, we have 4 hosts: myself, my wife Tiffany, Ben, and Ethan, and they all bring something new to the table, and we try to keep it kind of like chaotic by scaling it down to 3 people. And so occasionally we'll swap out people. Like sometimes Tiffany will sit in for Ben, sometimes Ethan, or sometimes Tiffany will host the show. And so they've produced some shows, like Tiffany did War of the Gods, which was done before the passing of George Perez, and it was meant to like honor him, but also to illustrate the complicated nature of event building, to display the magnanimity of George Perez and how like awesome he was and how much he loved this character and how screwed he got by DC in this terrible, ridiculous event. And it was a book that I asked her to. I was just like, I don't even know what the hell happened in War of the Gods. Tiffany, could you just do this, please? And so I'm very proud of that episode because like she did a lot of work on that episode, and it's like, you learn a lot. Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is one of the first videos a lot of people who just came to our channel after the DC Studios announcement have seen, because, they didn't know what the hell Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow was. And, not to toot our own horn, but the video did pretty well, and we sold a lot of copies. And so I'd like to think that, people are acclimating to that idea because they watched a really fun episode. Tiffany's Batman Damned episode is an amazing episode because it talks. Because Batman Damned is one of those books that like it set up an interesting new relationship between like the then head of DC, the recent brought in head of DC Comics or DC's line, and DiDio. It shepherded the Black Label line and then completely torpedoed it. It represented an opportunity for DC that they completely screwed up, and it was a artistic endeavor that was like undercut by stupid dick jokes. And so I'm like, that's a really fun episode because it attempts to like kind of shout down some of the like ongoing noise about that argument and really get into it. So I'm really proud of those episodes. And also Tiffany brings in an element of cachet that I'm just like, I just can't, she classes up this joint is what I'm saying. As far as me, you know, we made our number one episode we've ever done is Doomsday Clock, which I never would have thought possible. When I did it, I was like, that'd be fun to talk about. It's 3 hours long and it has almost 350,000 views on it. And I'm like, that's our most popular episode.
Sal, that's great, man.
But like, and it's like literally 3 times longer than any normal episode. And people are like, I need to know what happened in Doomsday Clock. House of X, Powers of 10. That was a fun one because we pitched that idea where Tiffany really responded to Powers of 10 and I really responded to House of X. And so we were like, since they marketed that book as 2 series that are one, we were like, well, let's do 2 hosts that are one. So we both hosted the episode where we'd be like, all right, well, here's what happens in House of X. And then Tiffany would be like, and then Powers of 10. And that was a really fun handoff. And it was very like chaotic. And but I think it really worked out. So I'm a big fan of that one. And just off the top of my head, Secret Wars 2 was a really fun. That one, if you don't know what the show is, watch Secret Wars 2 because it's very silly. And we get into like how the comic gets made. We talk about Jim Shooter, but we also talk about the story. So you get a really like, that's what I try to do with the show. It's not just like, here's what happens in the book, because that's boring. But like, here's how the book came to be. Here's, you know, who were the players during that time. You know, like one of these days we're going to do Heroes Reborn. And I really want to get my ducks in a row and know like how that happened and why. And so, you know, I want you to learn something as well. Not just what happens, but also like why it happened and what like Marvel's going through at the time or DC, you know,
Sure.
in the case of DC. So yeah, like those are just a couple of examples. There's so many. You know, I was very lucky to do All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder as like our 4th or 5th episode because like it's so ridiculous and it that's what got people to go like, oh, this is a show. Like, okay, like that. I'm very indebted to that episode because, you know, 8 years ago, we talked about how crazy Uncle Frank told this really silly Batman story and it worked out great. And, you know, the rest is history, so to speak.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, Tevya, and forgive me, but really, I'm going to put up your question. Do you believe Amazing Spider-Man is beyond saving because that series has just been bad and garbage? Are you nuts, Tevya? Are you nuts? Whatever, as far as and I respect your opinion that it's not good. Beyond saving?
Yeah.
No comic book series, no comic book film property or television property. Nothing is beyond saving. Nothing. I'm sorry to yell, but truly, it's like, what are you thinking, man? No, they are one good story away from, good Lord, I love I hate new Star Trek for the most part. The live action. It sucked. It's been 6 years of me yelling at clouds like Grandpa Simpson. And the first episode of Picard was wonderful. And it's like, there's my Star Trek.
Yes. Yeah. But
so,
be careful because it's going to get dumb.
Have you seen? Sal, have you seen? Did you?
I have not, but I can't wait. Like, because I'm like, I want to see the crew. I want to see how they do it. But like, no, like, fool me once, shame on you. I can't love this again.
I so understand, Sal.
Spider-Man's
everyone's
one of those things.
been burned for 6 years, and it's like these guys don't get it. That said, there is going to come a time, whether it is under the Kurtzman regime or
after,
or if there is an after. God only knows if there'll be an after. Because I kind of agree with my buddy Rob Burnett, where I don't believe the executives are really paying attention to the stories, and they really are more about, well, Star Trek as a product and as a brand.
Yeah.
The reruns are doing great. We're putting out new stuff. They just see everything as, all right, everything's great, whether it's good or not. The animated product, I think, has been better, and especially Prodigy. I thought Prodigy's fantastic, and I think Lower Decks has slowly improved.
Okay.
But there's going to come a producer who gets it and gets the opportunity. And I think Metalis is that guy, because my friends who have had the opportunity to either see the first 6 episodes, like a lot of critics got, and the full 10. A lot of my friends have seen the full 10. And one, I won't name his name, but he's like, there's going to be moments that you roll your eyes, but on balance, it's good. And I'm
Okay.
like, that's fine. And again, the bar is so low right now. Fine. That's all I want. We're gonna do a long Star Trek show Sunday night with Mitch and Franco, my Aya Trek brethren, and Wayne likely as well. And we'll talk about it then. But yeah, I mean, are you a Star Trek guy? Were you a Star Trek guy?
As a kid, no. I was like, oh, more boring Star Wars pass, because I didn't understand. I didn't really get it. But I did get it eventually, and it was thanks to TNG. And I still I'm very selective with my Star Trek. Like I watched the original series movies. I didn't really care for the show at all.
Okay.
And I appreciate the show. I get it. But it's just like, there's a lot of things.
Show.
There's a lot of things in my head I don't have room for. I'm just like, I can't watch Game of Thrones. I'm like, I can't put a whole nother universe in here.
I know it's great, and I even got to meet George Martin, but I'm like, I don't know why, Sal. I don't know about you, but in fantasy in general, I'm kind of done with fantasy.
I'm always one good story away from getting back into anything, and that's kind of like the headline of this whole inspired conversation. Like,
yes.
Star Trek is dead until you see Brandon Braga's name on another episode, or until someone who believes in the series comes in and shepherds it into something else. Like Spider-Man, the comic book series. I have not been happy with it for years. Okay. And I think that the problem.
Did you like Slott's run or no?
I liked some of Slott's run. I liked a lot of it, and I think that he stayed on too long, and he spun his wheels a little bit, and he reads the comment section too much, and it affects his judgment. But Big Time is wonderful. I love Big Time. Superior Spider-Man, everyone is that's everyone's favorite. That's one of those things Marvel really dropped the ball on Superior Spider-Man. Why did you cancel it? Not cancel it. Obviously, Superior Spider-Man it was always going to end up with a relaunch of Amazing Spider-Man.
Of course.
But halfway through sales, halfway through the book, you go, people really like this. People who are not we're getting twice the audience reading Amazing Spider-Man or reading Spider-Man right now. People like Doc Ock as Spider-Man.
Well, it was interesting.
What do we do? So yeah, but
you can't predict that, because look at the shit Nick Spencer took with Evil Cap.
Yeah.
And honestly, man, listen, I love this stuff. You love this stuff. But there were blogs where I'm like Shatner on Saturday Night Live. Get a life. You've ripped my heart out. I'll never be able to love Cap again and it's like, God, I'm really glad you weren't alive during the 60s for the imaginary stories.
Yeah.
Where Clark Kent had a Tommy gun and was mowing guys down.
Yeah.
And other ridiculous shit like that. And it's the genie's going to be put back in the bottle.
Yes.
Relax.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Because it's frustrating to, nobody wants to be told that the thing that they identify with is fake, right? But at the end of the day, it is fake. It didn't really happen. But the other thing is, there's some parts that are you're deliberately or just unobservantly misinterpreting what's going on here. Bucky didn't find a secret journal that revealed that Captain America had always been in Hydra. We knew a cosmic cube changed the past. So we know that a cosmic cube will change it again. Or
something will happen.
Or we knew that, but they did change reality, but we know that the reality was changed. It was not that Cap had always been, it's that Cap was made to have always been. And you're part of the journey. The journey's not going to end with Captain America being a Nazi forever. It's just not. But you're deliberately, and I saw the same thing on Twitter, and so comics Twitter is another thing. But I saw the same thing on Twitter where people were getting mad at one Superman writer. Yeah, it was about Lois. People were upset about Lois for having sexuality, and they were really mad at somebody for something another writer did. And it's just that right there shows that you're just A, you're not reading the books, B, you're not really a fan, and C, you're not paying attention. If you're gonna go out there and be like, boo, this thing sucks, at least do enough research to know who you're yelling at and why you're yelling at them. With Spider-Man, I have very vocally been I can't read Spider-Man anymore. It hurts my heart to read Spider-Man. And it does. And I very recently, after Dark Web, I was very upset, and I went on this whole tirade about I've been wronged, You know, like you sold me a bill of goods, you made a really bad book, you took my money, and there it is. And but at the same time, it's like all it takes is one good story. Like all it takes is one good issue. You know, I quit comic books, all of them, after the Clone Saga. When they told me Ben Reilly was the real one, I'm like, are you? I was just I was outraged. And that's actually something that is outrageous. Like, you know, telling you open a story by being like, the Green Goblin steals a cosmic cube. He's like, I'm going to make Peter Parker evil using this magic device that makes him evil. You know, he wasn't always evil. This magic device does it. But if you quit the book because Peter Parker's evil because a magic device made him evil, I mean, like, I get it. I get you don't want to read that story. Like, just like I don't want to watch Scott's Tots when I'm watching a rerun of The Office. You know, I don't want to be part of that journey. But don't yell at the editor because you don't like how the story goes.
You know, Doctor Who, I hate to say it because I was rooting for Jodie Whittaker and I was all for a woman doctor. But when Chris Chibnall is like, well, you know, really, William Hartnell wasn't the first Doctor. Actually, she was a woman to begin with. And it's like, fuck you.
Right, like don't change everything just to justify a decision you made in the present.
And I'm very curious to see.
Yeah,
much like the child that Peter and Mary Jane had at the end of the Clone Saga, do we ignore this moving forward with Doctor Who?
Right?
Does Russell Davies, who is the man who brought Doctor Who from the ashes, and you know, starting with Christopher Eccleston, you know, maybe he can fix it, maybe he can make it better. Maybe the Master was lying to Jodie Whittaker when he gave her that story. I certainly hope so, because. And the same thing goes with, and I don't mean to bring it back to Star Trek because I do want us to talk comics, but like Michael Burnham and Discovery. Oh, this is Spock's sister, and he learned so much from this Spock's sister. Fuck you,
right?
And no disrespect to Sunita Martin Green, who's an excellent actress,
right?
And no disrespect to the actors who were just handed the stories. It's like, that's what we're shooting to this today.
Yeah.
You know, this is what you got to do. And it's like, but really, it's like, don't disrespect the OG fans.
Yeah. But at the same time, don't forget, you know, I know for a fact you don't have a brother because you never have a brother. Actually, that's true. I don't have a brother, but Cybok is my brother. Like,
but he's my half brother. But at least they played with it, man.
They did play with it, but like, they did just tell everybody in a movie he has a brother, so you'd have emotional stakes. Just like, oh, he's a brother. Like that, it's equal horseshit, but at the same time, like, don't like measure your expectations and understand how like it is fiction at the end of the day. Like, don't send, you know, like, don't send death threats and DMs and attack writers and like, don't like email Kelly Marie Tran because you don't like her character or like
so unfair.
You know, it's
so
like
unfair.
And by the way, I don't want to get into that can of worms, but I'm just saying, like, the actors. They're puppets. Leave those people alone. They're just trying to get a check. They don't want to do Wheaties commercials their whole lives. They don't want to sell dick pills on at like 4 a.m. Okay, leave them alone. They're just getting a paycheck. You know, like,
and one more comment on the sequels.
Yeah,
like Boyega and Daisy Ridley and Kelly Marie Tran.
Yeah,
they are like, hey, guess what? Fuck Star Wars. I'm sorry, I did it. I never want to do it again. Although Ridley, I guess, recently said, "Oh, I didn't," and I didn't say,
"Hell yeah," because she's not getting any work, and she and it paid a lot of money, and you know, like, and I think that like all those characters could get. All it takes is one good story. All it takes is like is an architect who's like, I gotta. Basically, it's a requel trilogy. Like, we're not gonna undo the last trilogy, but we're gonna go on another adventure that kind of supersedes that adventure, that literally stars everybody that's still alive. Like, they could easily and it's a 3-act structure and it follows the Campbellian method and it just works. They could easily do that, and everyone would be like, man, you know who's great in this movie? John Boyega. Like, it would take a second to fix this. Now, it's not as easy as all that, but like, it'll feel as easy as all that. You know, like, I quit those books at the Clone Saga. JMS, there's a big gap. And going back and rereading some of the older stuff, like, you know, the Identity Crisis and the Mackie era, like the final confrontation between Howard and Osborn. Yeah, like, I don't really like Mackie's books, but especially Spider-Man books. But like the one issue where the Daily Bugle comes down and he holds it up, like, that's a really good issue. And it's like, you know, they're a couple of gems. But when JMS came in and he wrote that, like, the one issue I read when Dr. Doom is at the airport, and Cap and Spider-Man team up, and Spidey and Mary Jane get back together. I was like, the dialogue's great. Romita Jr. is doing fantastic stuff. Like, it's everything about this works, and then it kept working, But I'll talk about how much I love Straczynski, but like, there are 2 or 3 arcs that I don't think are good at all. And
Sins Past, obviously.
Sins Past, the other, and a book that nobody complains about called Skin Deep.
I don't remember Skin Deep. What happened?
Nobody does, because it's right after New Avengers and right before Civil War or something, one of them. But Skin Deep was one of those things where Straczynski's like, and you know what it is? When you're like analytical and a nerd, you notice these things and you fill in the gap because you got critical thinking skills. And like I remember Eddie Brock.
Yes.
Eddie Brock was he appeared in one of Straczynski's issues, and Straczynski, he did it twice. Straczynski was like, his name's Eddie Brock. Have they ever said his full name, like what Eddie stands for? No? Well, I'm not going to do the research, so I'm just put Edwin Brock. And I'm like, you're just wrong. It's Edward. It's always been Edward. Why would you go with Edwin? And then he did another one where it was like Aunt May reveals that her maiden name was Fitzgerald because he wants to name her after F. Scott Fitzgerald. But Ben Reilly exists, and Ben Reilly is named after Aunt May's maiden name. Anyone who read Spider-Man would know that, but Straczynski's like, I was too busy writing Babylon 5. I didn't read Spider-Man. I don't know about the clone. So like when you know or notice these things, when Straczynski goes, in Skin Deep, there was another nerd at Midtown High who was lower on the totem pole than Peter Parker.
Okay.
And he's even more angry, but he didn't get bit by a spider, but he does get like molten man powers later. And it's about like anger and hanging on to like rage and not letting go and stuff. It's Straczynski's story, but I'm like, this character doesn't exist. There's no room for him. If you read Untold Tales of Spider-Man, you'd know what his entire rogues gallery. There's no room for this character. So the whole thing is felonious. So like, and it's really heavy-handed. So like for me, I'm like, this doesn't work. And I didn't want to normalize it because I'm like, what you're doing is you're popularizing, like you're giving room for like popular creators to play fast and loose with continuity because it suits them. They're uneditable now. Like somebody noticed, and I know that like they changed the Edwin Brock and they changed the Fitzgerald, like they changed it in the trades in the later.
That's
book.
awesome,
right? But not of course. That's the problem. Is you're like, well, but did you actually like? Do you care? Is there an editor working here? Like, did they notice? So like, there's a lot of So when you're thinking about that kind of thing, or you let that thing invade your mind, you get kind of obsessed over it. But Skin Deep was one of those books where I was like, this is a bridge too far. And I know it seems like a very minute, it seems like a Princess and the Pea kind of situation here. But I was like, no, if we let stuff like Skin Deep go through, one day he's going to be like, we never talked about Peter Parker's parents, right? Well, actually, they were seafarers and they were pirates, just making stuff up. And, he gets too big for his britches, too powerful, then editors can't like edit him. Then all of a sudden you got a Grant Morrison situation where it's like Grant Morrison has no editor, not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but like not everybody's Grant Morrison. But anyway, so
no, I'm with you, man. No, and Joe Straczynski, I know
he's great. No, I love him.
Listen, but, I love Babylon 5. He's 50-50 on comics. He bats 500. There's a lot of, I love Midnight Nation. I love a lot of his original ideas.
The 12.
His yes. And his run on Thor I enjoyed. His Fantastic Four I enjoyed. But no, you're right, man. And I do know on the DC side, that Superman story, I'm sorry.
Grounded was awful.
Yeah, just horrible.
Just awful. And what?
And go on, because you might know what I know about Grounded.
Well, I know that like he got like kicked off of it halfway through. Like it was just like stop it. Like
well, I didn't know that he got kicked off. I thought it was, as he says, he had a real health scare where he was going blind.
Oh yeah, I do remember that now.
That's in his autobiography.
Yeah.
But I do know not only was it Grounded, but also he was doing Wonder Woman too. And the amount of notes that he left for the creators, and you guys can connect the dots of who took over both books, he didn't leave them much to work with.
Right.
And unfortunately, because he was such a big name, DC felt committed to finish both stories. And it's like, wait a minute, he's leaving after 4 or 5 issues, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And we got another fucking 8 issues. Thanks,
Yeah.
DC. Thanks a lot.
Exactly.
And that shitty edict that nobody could use those characters while Joe was working on them. And poor Dwayne McDuffie got Justice League with, it's like having a handful of 2s and 3s. And it's like, well, can I at least put the Atom in? No. Well, can I at least put Hawkman in? No. And it's like, all right, so you had Gypsy and Plastic Man Vixen. And the Elongated Man together. And it was this group of C-level. It was worse than JLA Detroit.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is horrible. And that's why I got to say, and I mentioned it briefly to Josh Williamson, I'm kind of bummed that Infinite Frontier didn't last as a status quo. Although I have to say that it seems like with the Black Label books and things like somebody had mentioned how much they're loving Danger Street, Tom King's book, that there is room for these non-continuity books that if somebody has a great, like, God, I'm loving, and again, that's somebody I'm talking to next Wednesday during the day, Jeff Lemire. We're going to talk about the Swamp Thing Black Label book. I love what Rom has done with Swamp Thing and introducing a new Swamp Thing, but I like Alec Holland. And I'd like to read every now and then a good Alec Holland story. And Green Death or whatever the fuck it's called.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Swamp Thing, Green Hell.
Green Hell. You're right. Green Hell.
Such a good book.
It's great. And it's great because it's a future story, and you got Senior Citizen Constantine, and you got and it's this really great Alec Holland story.
Right.
And it's and Doug Monkey's drawing the shit out of it.
Yes.
And I love Historia, of course, with Kelly Sue.
Yes.
And we are due to have our third conversation when she and Nicola can schedule it so we can finally cover volume 3.
That'll be great.
But yeah, I mean, it's like there's got to be room for good stories beyond. I mean, I respect continuity.
Yeah.
I do like the continuing story. I do like when books are mirroring what else is happening in other books, but I don't like it to be handcuffs.
No. And I think I think in the arguments or the problems that people have with like the status quo changes, it's okay to stop. Like, there are a lot of people who I think that Dan Slott unfortunately suffered from the fact that Spider-Man is so visceral and integral to so many people's like identities that you can't just stop reading Spider-Man.
Readers, you mean?
There's so many readers of Spider-Man who probably have hated it longer than they've loved it, but they still buy the book and they still read it and they just get more and more upset. And like I'm living the dream here. I'm telling you right now, I've quit comics because of Spider-Man at least twice. Like, it was One More Day and it was the Clone Saga. And it was and the Clone Saga was, you told me one thing and you gave me another and you changed it to a point where it's like, you've told me that my stories don't matter. And with One More Day, I learned that like there's no creator or story that's stronger than editorial mandate, because Joe Quesada was very vocal about what he wanted to do with Spider-Man. So like if I can't extricate myself from the meta commentary of the story, then you've failed at telling me a story. But it's okay to quit, because
sure it is.
As you said, like there are great stories that are outside continuity or over there. Comics are expensive. I quit comics right before high school, so it's like I had a good long run where I was only reading Spawn for a little while until 100 issues came out. And at 100, I went, that's enough of Spawn. I'm okay now. I mean, and I dropped it in the 70s, and I'm like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And then I heard about 100, and I remember Todd saying like, oh, it's over after 100. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'll read the 80 to 900 or to 90. And I obviously, he was lying. But if he actually said that, I don't remember. It might have been like an article in Wizard magazine from like 10 years prior. But it was just like I wasn't reading comics at all for like a good chunk of time. But it didn't mean that I didn't love them and I didn't understand them and I didn't like check in every once in a while. It doesn't mean that you can't go back. And that's like kind of the lesson I was trying to impart earlier, where I'm like, just because I didn't read everything, or just because I didn't love a certain thing doesn't mean that I don't like, or like, I didn't like a certain number of Straczynski books, but that doesn't mean I don't recommend him as an author, or that I don't recommend his Spider-Man run. And with respect to quitting, like, just quit. See if you get more joy in your life from not subjecting yourself to something you hate than otherwise. If you miss Spider-Man, then you get to ask yourself a fundamental question. Would I rather live my life reading old issues of Spider-Man and selectively grabbing, like when JMD does a past story that they do a miniseries of, which he's done at least twice this year, or do I give up the Ghost and just read anyway, but like, that's a question you have to make that's a question you have to answer for yourself. And it's really important to, like, as a comic book reader, but more importantly, as a human being, to like know when you've had enough and to be like, no mas.
Sure. Absolutely. No. And also, I mean, I'll tell you, I quit during high school and college because I wanted to date and I wanted to spend the money on girls,
yes,
as opposed to comics. But I have to admit, midway through college, that's when the Rolling Stone article about Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns came out. And I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. And the art looks interesting. I'm in. And all of a sudden, on the heels of Dark Knight came Watchmen.
Right.
So I got back for a while. Then when I was out of college and struggling, as we all do in our 20s, I don't know how to break it to you kids, but 20s, and listen, the economic situation is tough. I am not trivializing that.
No.
But we all come out of college owing a lot of money,
yeah.
and having to take shit jobs before we can get into the career that we want to do.
True.
I mean, I worked at Blockbuster. I worked at department stores. I had like 3 jobs at the same time just to make ends meet, because that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Welcome to your 20s. But anyway, it was in the very late 90s when Bendis was doing Ultimate Spider-Man and Quesada was doing Iron Man and Kevin Smith was doing Daredevil.
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, they're cool.
It's exciting. It was an exciting time.
And even prior to that, I saw Kingdom Come. And I did buy that in Marvels because I'm like, well, I really love Alex Ross's art.
Yeah.
Thank God he had guys like Wade and Busick to collaborate with on those great stories. So I did come back for those things. But yeah, man, I think
that's the thing, right? Like, you can bomb back in. Like, you can bomb in every once in a while, especially if you hear about like an amazing Black Label book or Fantastic Four Full Circle, like they're trying something different or they're doing something. The thing that I found that was really invaluable, and I think YouTube and podcasts have replaced them in this manner. I read Wizard when I was out of comics. I didn't read comics. I read Wizard.
Funny.
And Wizard would tell me like what was coming out and what was interesting or what was exciting. Eventually, I stopped reading Wizard because Wizard changed their format and became it became a rag.
Yes,
and so I stopped. But literally, Free Comic Book Day was created, and I got back into the comic book store because I heard there were free books. And I was like, all right, well, oh man, J. Scott Campbell drew the cover of Spider-Man. I love J. Scott Campbell. I remember him from Gen 13. Picked up that copy, and I was like, this is great, And I had a roommate, thankfully, who had the first like 5 or 6 volumes of with Spider-Man. He had all the Exiles books.
Oh, great.
And I was just like,
this is a blast.
It is. And I was like, this is what they're doing now? Like, this is exciting. And I promise you, if you love comics will present something exciting again for you. But if you're burning out, it's better to just stop than to let it calcify your heart and make you into an internet keyboard warrior who just freaks out at the moment's notice. Like, I hear you. Like, I hear, it's frustrating, especially when like how easy it is to like change status quos. Like, it will just, one day Joe Quesada just got enough votes and Spider-Man's not married anymore. Like, that sucks. But which means that if we get especially it's because you have enough ammunition now in pop culture where it's like, if enough of us get together and we just harangue and upset enough executives, we'll get our way. That is not how things work. And there will never be enough of you in the comic book industry to really make that kind of change.
No, but I'm sorry, Sal, please finish.
There's not enough money. Like, the thing is, the comic book, like the movie studio, maybe, because like they're really worried about Twitter for some reason. But the comic book industry, I promise you, if the book sells, if the let's say the book sells 80,000 units, right? Every month it sells 80,000 units, and you're outraged. And every day you go on the subreddits and you go on the Twitter and you go on the YouTube channels you watch, and everybody's talking about how bad this book is. It sells 80,000 copies and you just hate it. And they're trying to get this message out there that says the comic book industry is dying because I don't like this one thing that's happening to this character, and everybody in it is in on the plan to make me not read comic books anymore, and it's all just a big Illuminati controlled beehive. But the book still sells 80,000 copies, and you and 50 or 60 or 100 of your friends all get together and ruin live chats and harass and upset like comic book creators on Twitter, and the book still sells 80,000 copies. The book's going to come out exactly the same way, and those creators aren't going anywhere. They don't care. Like they don't care. The only way to ever change anything about the comic book is to stop buying it. Like I remember when Amazing Spider-Man was doing something, and Renew Your Vows was coming out at the same time. They had Renew Your Vows with Stegman and company.
Yep.
And I was like, listen, if Renew Your Vows outsells Amazing Spider-Man, they'll switch him. Like they'll go, the audience wants them to be married with a kid, and then they'll do it.
Sure.
But it didn't.
Well,
so they won't.
Yeah, and again, they want to keep Peter perpetually young.
Yeah, well, because they think it'll keep him profitable.
Right.
But if you have two books where one he's single and like constantly getting kicked in the nuts, and another one where he's a father with a child and a wife, and the one with the father and the child and the wife sells 100,000 copies, 90,000 copies, and the other one's selling 70, 60, 50, they'll make the change because the audience has spoken.
Right.
But unless you have a really obstinate editor-in-chief who just doesn't want to see that change.
I don't know. I have to admit I've been paying more attention to DC than Marvel. I have my favorite Marvel books.
Oh yeah.
And I have to also admit that I was first as a child a DC kid. And it really wasn't until having read for a couple of years that I got into Marvel, and I like my Marvel books and my Marvel characters. Yeah. And Marvel Unlimited, thank God for Marvel Unlimited, because that is the great catch up.
Oh yeah.
Device, and it's reasonable. I have friends that don't have tablets, and I'm like, get a tablet and get Marvel Unlimited, man. It's the price of in a year, it's the price of 3 trades.
Yeah. And
you get access to everything.
Right.
Virtually everything. I mean, there are a few things that still, even old stuff that suddenly, like, what I've been itching to reread is John Byrne's Lost Generation. 12-issue maxi series. I know, but I love that period.
Yeah.
And I really, I mean, I am a comic and movie and TV history nerd where it's like, no, I loved when Brubaker did that series that featured all those timely characters, and it was set back in the 40s or whatever.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And same with when you mentioned the 12.
The 12
was Straczynski and stuff.
Right?
No, those were good. I enjoyed those. It's like, well, and also again, someone was mentioning how much they're loving Danger Street. I love that Tom is taking, and also in Human Target and Gotham City Year One. I love seeing these kind of third string characters getting a chance.
I feel like such a shill, man, when it comes to Tom King, because he has just been nailing it. Like, it's so frustrating how well he's been nailing. Because, like, I don't, I'm a critic. At the end of the day, I'm a critic, but I'm also not I am a shill in as much as I shill for things I like. I was very critical of Tom's run on Heroes in Crisis. I was very not a big fan of his Batman run, but I've also called Human Target a perfect comic book.
It's so great. Smallwood. Smallwood. Thank you.
Friggin' Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is a fantastic comic book. Danger Street, I found it a little boring. Like, I'm not into it, but I recognize what's working about it. Rorschach, I dismissed it out of hand. Read the damn thing, gave me nightmares. It's an incredible series. Gotham City Year One. First of all, Phil Hester's best work, but also it's phenomenal. And so like every time someone's like, what are you reading? I'm like, well, Gotham City Year One, Supergirl Woman Tomorrow, Human Target, Danger Street's pretty good, but I still, I'm waiting to get into it. It's like, oh, they're all Tom King books, and they're just,
Hey,
listen, give me more. Like, look. I mean, like, okay, Josh Williamson's Rogues. The Rogues book was really cool. But like, throw me
Zdarsky. I love what Zdarsky writes, both for both companies.
Yeah,
I think Ron V. I'm so glad that DC found that they found each other, and they're giving him the opportunities they're giving. I like Teenie Howard. I think she does a great job. I like
She's
Stephanie
great.
Phillips. I think she does a great job.
Yeah, and it's funny. There are creators who like you'll love and not. Like Jason Aaron is so talented, but I also can't read his Avengers.
How come?
I think it's awful.
Interesting.
Okay. I think it's boring. And it's just like there's stuff happening, and it just seemed it. I don't know. For me, I'm just like, you look so. Oh my god! Like things happen. It's just so silly, and for whatever reason, like it's all a bunch of silly shit. But like for whatever reason, it feels extra silly in Avengers. But his Punisher run, I was singing its praises literally like the other day. Like I was just like, this Punisher book is some of the best Punisher I've ever read in my life. And
I think since Ennis,
right,
Jason has been the best Punisher. Right? And also, by the way, I liked what Matt Rosenberg did with the Punisher.
Sure,
I liked what. Oh god damn it, I'm blanking now. The great woman writer and artist, and I liked her Punisher run too. And I can't think of her. God, I could see her in my head too.
Yeah,
great lady, fantastic lady and stuff. But no, it's yeah. Oh, by the way, people are asking what we think of Philip Kennedy Johnson's Superman, and also a lot of people shitting on Bendis's run.
And by the way,
fine, whatever.
I'm not a fan, but I love
okay.
Bendis. But the other thing is, I love Bendis. Like
sure.
I love Batman Universe is again one of those perfect
Thanks, Barucci.
books.
That's what I was saying.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks.
Bendis Ultimate Spider-Man changed my life. Like I changed my life. Like Ultimate Spider-Man is some of the greatest writing I've ever read in a comic book. Batman Universe. His New Avengers got me to. I never liked the Avengers.
Really?
Avengers. Yeah, I never liked the Avengers.
Wow.
I was like, look, a cavalcade of unsellable characters who are all on a boring team that do nothing, except fight with each other and make Wasp, take notes and design their outfits. Like, what a boring book. And by the way, that is very much a pedantic and uneducated opinion about the Avengers. I'm a street level kid. I like kids from Queens who get married to supermodel redheads and stop street crime, and occasionally invade the world with alien symbiotes. But all relatable street level characters. But but eventually New Avengers got me into the brand and got me into that series, and his Disassembled showed me Avengers Disassembled does the same thing for the Avengers that the Star Trek original movies do for the show. It contextualizes the history and the gravitas of that world in a big, flashy, expensive spectacle. Like, you watch the original series without watching the show, and I want to be involved. I want to be part of the franchise. I see their rapport and I'm like, I love it. I want to get it. I want to be in on it. Like, I feel bad that Spock doesn't remember Kirk shortly after his resurrection. I want to see them finally get back together. And I've only known them for 2 movies and he died in one of them. But you go back, right? Avengers Assembled is one of those books I think that does a great job of being like, this is what the Avengers actually was. When I was reading it, it was like Avengers West Coast. One time Doom took over the compound. They had a compound underwater. One time Doom took over the compound during a cocktail hour with Reagan. And I'm like, they all got, and it was just, and Rage was a member of the team. It was like a weird, street level Captain Marvel character. I was like, what is happening? Like, what is this? And, eventually I was like, oh, and then I go back and I read not Kang Dynasty,
Avengers Forever,
Kree Skrull War.
Oh, sure, the classic.
Yeah, I'm like, I read these and I'm like, I get it now. I get it. I might not be I read the first 17 issues of Avengers and I'm like, this is rough. this is a little rough, but I appreciate what's going on, and I'm enjoying myself. But Avengers Forever, Kurt Busiek is a masterclass at taking what came before and like and being like, actually, it was really important and really good. Let me show you why. Like Busiek's really good at that. So like, there's
great.
that, you know. But
Wade
yeah,
is
no,
put that way too.
Wade, yeah.
And I'm loving, by the way, for a moment back to DC, loving World's Finest.
World's
loving
Finest.
that it's set before current continuity, so you can really enjoy Batman, Dick Grayson, you know, and earlier DC. And I'm talking to Wade a week from Monday.
That's awesome.
It's a good chance to kind of like remind everybody, you know.
Yeah, right. Like, you should check out the show. Yeah, I've met Mark Waid a few times. I've never had him on the show because I don't know if you know, or I don't know if you've noticed, but he doesn't trust comic book YouTubers very well.
Who doesn't?
Mark Waid. You know, he's like, what's your angle? What are you talking about on YouTube about comic books? What are you trying to do?
Well, you know,
and I'm like, nothing, man.
There's all those Comicsgate haters.
I know why.
Target,
I get why. I'm just like, you know, but I'm like, dude, it's cool. I'm on the level. He's like, well, I'm never going to watch your show because I don't have time. And so I can never, so I'll never know. But I've gotten him thanks to my contacts at DC want to promote like World's Finest. And when they made that big reveal in the 2 issues ago about Boy Thunder and his real origins, I don't want to spoil it right off the bat, but like, they were like, we want to promote that. We'll put Wade on your show for like 15 minutes. And I'm like, okay. And so we've had Mark on the show a little bit, and he's talking to him in general, you know, just at the booth, you know, he's such a fun, pleasant, you know, character, and he's got so many like great stories, and you know, it's just fantastic. And you know, he's a good writer.
Luckily, I came along before YouTube. And yes, that's how old I am, everybody. 18th anniversary of Word Balloon coming May 10th, which is amazing. The audio version, yeah.
Holy crap!
And luckily, and I think I've told you this when you and I just talked, Mark is really good friends with Art Baltazar and Franco, the Tiny Titans guys.
Yes, that's
right.
And
thankfully, being friends with them has only helped me, and also my interviews has helped me reach a level of trust with Mark. And also, I was really on his side when the Comic-Gate idiots were jumping on him, and I'm like, no, fuck you. You guys are wrong. And listen, everyone doesn't need to agree, and if you don't like a comic, you have every right to not support it.
Exactly.
But I don't buy, and I actually saw it earlier in the chat of, well, DC and Marvel are trying to appeal to the left too hard, and they don't read comics. Bullshit. Well, bullshit.
I would argue that they're not really reading comics.
It's a big enough. It's a bit, and I do want to hear what you think. It's a big enough comic book world. You don't have to like everything, and fine. Let other people with different points of view enjoy their comics the way you enjoy yours. What's your take?
Well, there's a misunderstanding, I think, that's permeated the conversation. That is that because a thing exists, then it is supplanting a thing that could exist, and this is not the case. You know, like the thing that you think would be happening if it weren't for the thing you wouldn't read. No, like they make these decisions based on who they have in the bullpen, who can produce, and what the market will bear. These are the reasons. And
not to say they haven't had. I'm sorry, Sal, because I don't want to interrupt. But not to say that they have leaned too hard on creating new legacy characters and forgetting about the classics. And I've had that conversation with Bendis, Wade, Axel Alonso after the fact. And it's like, I do think it's a fair expectation to buy, and I'll name characters, to buy an Iron Man comic and all of a sudden
Iron Man to show up in it.
Yeah, and it's like, well, it's the Riri Williams show instead. And it's like, I got no problem with her being in the book but I always point to Jason Aaron and the way he handled Thor.
Yeah.
When Jane Foster became Thor, you didn't leave the Odin son, and I love saying that word, on the back burner. It's like the dual stories were happening. Okay, Jane is Thor now. Well, what's happening with him? And you know, Brian would argue back, well, you know, Tony's the ghost in the machine. And I'm like, it's not the same, Brian.
No,
I love you. And you know, Brian's one of my great friends, and it's just, we'll agree to disagree. But yeah, man, it's that's awesome, man. Oh, aren't you sweet? Barucci, hey man, honestly, I always appreciate that Barucci watches a lot of these live.
Yeah.
And he said for my 18th anniversary, I got to email him and he'll send me subscriber giveaways. Nick, you'll give me your email address, and you can message me on Facebook or something. You don't have to do it publicly.
Exactly.
But no, that's very sweet, Nick. I appreciate that. Nick, I want you on the show. Come on, man. Because honestly, I think Dynamite's a really interesting company.
Yeah.
I think the licenses they get are always interesting, and they hire a lot of my friends, both writing and drawing. And it's like, hey, man, I remember when, like, Oming was trying to cut his teeth as a writer. Nick was giving him opportunities, and Phil Hester and Andy Parks and guys like that were artists first and foremost. And it's like, hey, these guys can write too.
Yeah.
And that's great. So
exactly.
Anyway, but no, it's yeah.
And the funny thing is, with respect to the legacy characters, I don't want to harp on this because I think I'm very thankful that the conversation has pretty much died down about it.
Yes, well, again, because I think they learned. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I think that I actually have like a more, not a sinister, but more cynical look at why, like the all new, all different Marvel era. When they were like, well, clearly you're just replacing all the characters because, you have an agenda and all this stuff. I'm like, no. That's not what happened. And by the way, I have nothing to back this up. So don't think that I have don't blame anybody that I might have any innocent association with. I promise you, we don't talk about that when we do talk. If we do, and I have no context in Marvel. I think what happened was Marvel likes to save money. And we know that. But Marvel seems to have a absence of active editors. And I think that in order to shoulder the load of making the most amount of books out of the big two, they have writers they trust to essentially edit themselves. Nick Spencer's one of them, or at least he was. And I think that Nick Spencer found that out, and he was like, well, I'm doing this thing with this character. I'm doing this thing with this character. Like Thor. Aaron's doing this thing with Thor. I'm doing this thing with Cap. And Aaron and Spencer are known quantities. They're known properties. They you can trust them to write a book. And what am I going to do as an editor that's going to fix what they're going to do anyway? Right? They know what they're doing. They've been in this industry a long time. So what do I need to do here? And so what I found, or what I imagine, is they were like, I'm going to open the floodgates in as much as I'm going to be like, look, you guys, if you're going to do anything that's going to change, if you're going to change anything, then do it now, because there's nobody watching the gate. Come on in. We'll have a kegger. It'd be great. And so that's where you suddenly at the end of the year, they had all these pitches that were greenlit, and then they were like, where is everybody? Where are all the characters? Oh, well, I did this and I did that and I did that. And they're like, this is an entirely different Marvel Comics. I'm like, yeah, well, that's what happens when nobody's friggin' working. And it's like, oh, well, I guess we could call it something. All new, all different Marvel. You like it? You know what I mean? I think that's more or less how that shaked out. Not I think we should take characters who are making us billions of dollars in the movies and just completely replace them in the comic books. That way it confuses anybody who might be coming off the street to buy these things. It's not a good business decision. So anyway, I think that's, I don't think it's like a secret sinister agenda. I think it's just, as it is with so many things, any significant seismic shifts in history are not necessarily done by a secret Illuminati. It's usually a hapless, innocent, or either an unrelated assassination, or some kind of, someone slipped on a banana peel, and or there were a flock of geese on a radar screen. It's like, oh, oops. So yeah. Anyway,
you're killing me.
that's just that's my theory. It's more the no one's driving the bus theory,
which I understand that. Forgive me, everybody. I think my laptop is kind of messed up right now. Am I kind of doubling?
Oh no, not right now. No, okay, not to me. Let me find out.
Something. I'm going to maybe reduce my speaker.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, still.
I can hear you. Okay. Let me listen to the video while it's happening.
Because I don't, if I need to, I'll leave the studio for a second, and I will let you talk about what you're excited about regarding James Gunn
Oh
and the
yeah.
slate of DC TV and movies. So why
Sure.
don't you do that? And I'm going to leave and come
Oh, it
back.
sounds
And you keep going
okay. It
because
sounds
I know
good.
you
So right
can.
now it
A,
sounds
I
good.
know you can, and B, I
Yeah.
do want to hear what you think about
All
this
right.
stuff. So I'll be right back, everybody. But please
Okay.
tell us about it, buddy.
All right. When it comes to the DC slate, I've actually been very lucky. I managed to do 2 different videos regarding the DC slate on our own channel, Comic Pop Returns. One in which we had our special guest Jason Inman, who came on and we just talked about it, we just reacted to it. And then another time we had Only Stupid Answers, DJ Wolderidge and I kind of speculated about what like the next phase could be after the DC slate. So I've really taken a number of bites out of this apple. But looking at the DC slate, the DC Studio slate, if you just want to like break it down, as far as like what I'm most excited by versus what I'm like kind of, I don't know, indifferent, casually, because I have no anger or dissatisfaction with any of it. The only thing that I really the head scratcher for me was Creature Commandos, but only in as much as I wasn't familiar with it. And apparently it's very much like it's one of the more obscure DeMatteis properties. But seeing the art for it and then hearing, once I saw it, I'm like, yeah, James Gunn picked Creature Commandos, no question. That's a James Gunn idea, right? Like, okay. Like that's you couldn't do Doom Patrol. So you pick this one. Fine. Like, yeah. And it's an animated thing that'll be, on HBO Max or whatever they call it one day. Okay. I got no complaints about that, but it's 50-50 on whether I'll even watch it. I'm not thrilled, but I'm not upset. I'm just kind of like, and causing absolutely no waves. Here is Creature Commandos. Cool. Superman Legacy. This is something that I'm hyped about in a big bad way. Obviously, Superman Legacy is like, younger Superman. He had teaser images of All-Star Superman. I don't think it's going to be All-Star Superman, but I think he's going to try and like get the theme or the ideas about it. Like,
Agreed.
Superman, Superman's like what's it called? Like his impact and the rogues, or at the very least his supporting cast. Like we'll see Lois and Jimmy and Perry and like the Fortress and his parents and like Ma and Pa, and maybe there'll be like an allusion to like the Legion of Superheroes, but like for the most part it'll just be like this is the cast. My hope is that it is more of like a kind of adaptation of some of our more like famous self-contained stories like Superman Birthright or hell, Superman for All Seasons would be really great. But again, these are all kind of like origin stories, and he said he wanted to do like he's been Superman for like a year kind of idea. And I would love to see them do What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, but I think they're saving it. I think that's gonna be a movie, but I think they're saving it for one of the announcements they made here. Waller, great, great idea, duh. I can imagine that there's probably like 6 hours of deleted footage of Waller from the Peacemaker show. You could turn into this is the alternate version of Peacemaker that was just the Waller stuff. But if they're going to shoot just a whole Waller show, sure, why not? The only thing is, Creature Commandos, okay, animated show in the same universe, maybe cast by people who they'll use in real life or on screen. Superman Legacy, restart for Superman, sure. This is where we go like, oh, you're not really rebooting everything. Waller, Viola Davis, she's great. Viola Davis is amazing. So like, it'd be tough to go, oh, well, I guess we'll, recast again. I mean, you had Angela Bassett in Green Lantern, who was phenomenal.
Pam Grier on the CW.
Was it really Pam Grier?
Yep.
Oh my God. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've never failed. I mean, CCH Pounder on the animated series.
Loved it.
Just, if you needed to reboot, just bring in CCH Pounder and just have her play Meta Waller. But Waller show makes sense.
Yeah.
The only thing is, it's not a reboot. Okay. Or it is kind of it's like a pick and choose reboot.
It's a soft reboot.
Soft reboot. Okay.
Yeah.
The Batman 2, my assumption is talks broke down. They wanted him to be their new universe Batman. Matt Reeves wanted to go Sony with it and be like, no, No, I made all this. It's all mine. And all right. We won't go with young Batman. We'll go with Dad Batman. The Authority was one of those things where I'm like, what?
Oh, I love it. Honestly, that's like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
In terms of, hey, I love this. That's why we're doing it.
Yeah. And the Authority also, like, the Authority does a number of things for you, because, like, in comic books, you go, so there's no question Wildstorm is intrinsically part of the DC plan. Like, and you can use any of it. So when you do your Authority movie, like, Alex Fairchild could be in it. Grifter could be in it. Nobody will argue.
Sure.
You know, at least Marlowe will show up. Like, okay, all right, cool. I also think the Authority is going to be a stand-in where it's like they're going to be a team for real and could be a franchise, but I think they're going to be a stand-in for the Elite, which is the Joe Kelly invention for Superman, so that we can be like, this is what superhero movies and superheroes could be, but how Superman will show you they shouldn't be.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think they're going to lead up to a Superman versus the Authority kind of movie.
I agree.
Yeah, all right.
No, I do. I think you're right about that. And definitely the contrast. I mean, and in a more angry way than whenever Marvel decides to reintegrate the X-Men into the MCU.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, the X-Men thing, I mean, I hope it's just, I hope they just go like, yeah, no, we have the most powerful psychic in the world. He's just kept you from knowing about it.
Sure.
Because I don't want him walking through a portal or having like energy blast out of an Eternal or a Celestial and make mutants. Like, I don't want mutants to be new, you know? Then we got the Booster Gold show, which, like, I never would have thought in a million years.
Isn't it great, though?
It's amazing. It's the perfect time for a Booster Gold show.
Dude, as you know, and I know we've had these conversations privately.
Yeah.
As much as our audience appreciates our shows.
Yeah.
The term social influencer makes my skin crawl.
Yes.
And Booster Gold is so right for this moment.
Exactly.
And I'm so happy for Dan because he created it when cable was brand new. And just the idea of a 24-hour news cycle was novel enough to introduce Booster Gold into that.
Yeah.
And sadly, as I said to Dan, society has evolved or really devolved.
Yeah.
To this point where here I am, I'm Booster Gold. I'm holding my energy drink. Posing just like all those idiot kids are doing.
He only gets more relevant. So perfect. Great idea. And the pitch was quick and easy. They went, we have a TikTok superhero, right? And they went, oh, okay. Yeah, do it.
I loved in Civil War when Tony pulls up the iPhone and there's Spider-Man and his videos are viral.
Yes. Right? Like, oh, you're the Spider Boy on YouTube.
Yep.
Brave and the Bold is what they're going to call the Batman franchise. Yes. I assume that's just keep it as far away from the Batman as possible. Don't even call it Batman. I guarantee you the movie will be called Batman, the Brave and the Bold before the movie comes out.
Of course it will.
Because it has to. Especially if it's going to be about Batman teamed up with Damian. I don't think it's going to be that Damian's the first Robin. I think it's more like there have been Robins. We probably won't even say how many there have been, but I guarantee it'll be the most fun Batcave you've ever seen. Like, I guarantee there'll be a giant robot dinosaur, a giant penny, and a couple of Robin suits in the back. I
sure hope so.
I think, and I would have said this is the first time we're getting blue Batman suit, but that's coming in Flash in the Flash movie.
Yes.
Like, we're getting a blue bat suit on screen, and it's going to look okay.
Isn't it interesting, by the way, the reaction?
Yeah.
That most of us are like, hey, cool, Michael Keaton is back. But of course, there's that loud, angry social media segment that it's like, enough. They were good movies. And it's like, relax.
I can't believe anybody has the balls to even say that. Like, whatever. Like, but I think that Brave and the Bold is, while, that's not Batman's franchise, it's a great idea. And I think, and I've talked about this before, the idea that, like, the Batman Brave and the Bold could be a movie franchise where they're like, okay, every subsequent Batman movie will be pairing Batman with a different character that we could introduce to the DCU. So like the next one could be Batman Brave and the Bold. It's Batman and Plastic Man. You know, somebody that would like really change it up and introduce this character in a way that like we can't risk making a Plastic Man movie because we don't know if that would make any money. But we could put Plastic Man in a Batman movie, and if they love him, we got a Plastic Man franchise now, right? Like, but yeah. Lanterns, you know, calling it True Detective, okay. We talked about this, Jason Inman and I. He was very much on the same page as me, and I'm sure you are as well, that they're probably just going to use Final Crisis for this. Like, Orion's going to be dead in an alley, and they're going to try and investigate who killed him.
Sure.
Like,
Space Cops.
Space Cops.
I mean, it really is what Grant and Liam Sharp did with their run.
Yes, exactly. I think that'll be a big... I mean, I don't see the Grant Sharp... the Morrison Sharp team doing it because of how expensive it would be.
Oh,
like,
good Lord, yes. As far as the other
everything, every issue is like, but I think that like Hal and John, good idea because it doesn't confuse anybody. You get a new Hal, you get to finally introduce John. I think it's going to work out great.
I love that they were using Gabe Hardman's Earth 1 art to illustrate what Lanterns could be.
That's fine with me.
I love Gabe's designs for the Lanterns.
I loved Earth 1, Green Lantern. I was like, this is a movie right here, but also a really good comic book. It looks good. You know, it works. It works on every level. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, yay.
Yay.
It's a great book. I hope it gets a hardcover out of this.
Well, you know it will, but also it treats her seriously.
Yes.
And I mean, I loved Helen Slater. She was adorable.
Yeah.
But it's a new era. And it's like the way they positioned Supergirl since New 52, being this teenager that lived on Krypton and wasn't a baby that left, it really gives her a different perspective.
Yes, exactly.
Which is great.
Yeah. And doing this, it deterrestrializes her. You don't have to worry about like two super people running around at the same time. I
liked Melissa Benoist.
Oh, she's great.
Benoist, whatever, however you say her name.
I've heard it Benoist, but like I'm like, but that's all right, fine.
I know, and I enjoyed the Supergirl series. I thought it was terrific. Yeah. Although I had friends, I don't know if you did, and it's like, well, you know, really, that's a Superman villain, and Superman should really take care of it. And I'm like, the name of the show is Supergirl. They're
never gonna. Yeah, no, I did not hear any complaints about Supergirl outside of them being like, I would never watch the show in a million years,
which is fine.
Which and not for any particular reason other than the fact that like you know, Callista Flockhart was in it.
I like Callista Flockhart.
Well, there you go. I'm not the world's biggest fan. I was not an Ally McBeal booster back in the day. Not that I had any problem with it. I was just like, this doesn't appeal to me.
I like the way they made Cat Grant though, like a Ted Turner mogul.
Yes, that's a good idea.
And Cat Grant, another great character.
That
I've loved, you know, for 30 plus years.
Totally. So. I hope that Supergirl does well enough for us to because Tom King's part of the brain trust of this whole thing. So like, I have to assume that like every phase will be Mr. Miracle, Human Target, you know, everything will be a mini series that was a Tom King book outside of Heroes in Crisis. Like everything else is just, here's the Sheriff of Babylon. You know, you never know. I feel like we're getting that. At least Human Target. If you get Human Target and Mr. Miracle, we're good. Paradise Lost, that was the like Game of Thrones inspired Wonder Woman story.
Wonder Woman.
But it's mostly pre-her, mostly about the
like Kelly Sue series, like history.
Yeah, okay.
Her story, cool. Whatever it's called. Forget.
Oh, Historia, yes.
Historia.
Yeah. That's if they do Historia or something like that, where it's like it's establishing who they are, what their whole thing is. Maybe they were because they say Game of Thrones a lot, and I'm like, it's gonna be a lot of like killing and banging. I don't need that. Like you know, I guess you could do that, but like but it could be one of those things where it's like before Diana, things were kind of rough, and I'm like. Okay. Either way, you know, right now they're using a lot of iconography of Gal Gadot, and they're like, oh, this is all. And I'm like, is she Wonder Woman? Are we doing that? Are we keeping her? So by the time they get to Paradise Lost, who knows? And then there's Swamp Thing, which will easily have Constantine in it. I don't have any compulsion about it. There's no way Constantine's not in this show or movie. And that'll be great. James Mangold directing it. Awesome. You know, I don't think they're going to do the anatomy lesson. I think it's going to be like a Snyder or a Lemire. It's not going to be the Alan Moore book.
We'll see.
That's just rampant speculation on my
part.
But I think because they did it in the show.
Yeah, but who saw the show?
Right, both of us. You know, like that was it. Right. Like my wife and I, we loved it, but it was like, yeah, oh well.
You know,
yeah.
But yeah, we'll see, because I do like that idea of the anatomy lesson, and it's like, no, that's a plant who thinks it's Alec Holland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a really cool. It's a really cool idea, but the other thing is, you know, is the cat out of the bag by this point about the twist and the reveal? You know, like, will it have the same effect?
I think mainstream audiences have no clue about Swamp Thing.
That's fair.
And don't you see that as a Act 2 cliffhanger moment of, oh my God, we thought this was Alec Holland who turned into a plant.
Yeah.
And really it's a plant that thinks it's Alec Holland. And it's like, all right, well, how the fuck is this going to be resolved now?
Right. What do we do now? You know?
Right.
He's bones. Yeah, I love that. I'd be okay with that. And Mangold could do that. But yeah, I think that I suspect that since this is like and they're calling it Gods and Monsters, I think that's a smart move, because they're naming them instead of being like phase 1, phase 2. This is like, no, chapter 1, Gods and Monsters. You know, they're chapters, they have titles, they have allusions to other books you can pick up. What was it? They had something recently, The Flash trailer came out, and at the end of it, they were like, here's 3 books starring The Flash, goodbye. And I'm like, thank you. About time. And by the way, they did that at the end of Green Lantern. But, you know, nobody stuck around for the ending of that movie. So, you know, I don't blame you for not missing it. And, you know, and the incorporation of the Elseworlds moniker is great, because it means, like, you know, it's a catch-all, it's clean, you know, just like, oh, what about Joker? Oh, Elseworlds. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was smart rebranding. I mean, my friend Mitch, who runs Terrificon, you know, I'm like, it's going to take at least 2 years for, you know, the first projects we'll see from James Gunn.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, they're going to stop doing movies. And I'm like, dude, no, they're not.
No,
they're never going to stop. And we have, you know, for the next 2 years, Joker and the second Batman Reeves thing, and
Aquaman 2
TV things, Aquaman 2, Shazam 2, you know, coming
2,
up now, Blue Beetle. And I'm like, no, that's a neat rebranding of, okay, that's what these are.
Yeah. Now, who knows which ones are going to get called Elseworlds? And I imagine there'll be at least a couple of people who will be very surprised. Like, it'd be really kind of funny to have like the Shazam 2 open up, and it's like the and they're like really nice Elseworlds logo pops up. And Zachary Levi's like, what? Like, oh yeah, no, you're not in the universe. Like, oh.
Sal, I'm going to leave just because I'm having these weird wonky problems with the laptop. I don't know if you can see the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, feel free to address some questions.
Oh, sure, yeah.
While I try to figure out what's going on my end.
All right. I will. I'll hit up a couple of questions for you. Let's scroll back.
Up and running.
Oh, sure. I can't pull them up on the screen. So,
I realize that.
But yeah. Let's see here. Any opinion on the DC animation connection to the movies? I don't think there's going to be much outside of like the ones that are made specifically for this. You know, like I think the animated movies that they have made that are like direct to Blu-ray and on streaming, those will continue as usual. Adam Strange, thank you. That's another great idea for a miniseries. Strange Adventures would be the one to do. I would be very okay with a Strange Adventures series, especially because if you're like 5 years removed from introducing Superman Legacy and Paradise Lost and Brave and the Bold, you can have all the players who kind of had cameos in Strange Adventures, like Superman and Batman and so forth, and just put those in there. So yeah, Strange Adventures was the one we were missing. I would love a series of Strange Adventures.
I don't know if that's going to happen though, because that is so inside. It's a shame, because it's a great idea to deconstruct the space hero trope.
Yeah, but they also might be like, John Carter of Mars cost $400 million and it made like $1.98. I'm not doing that. Somebody asked Astrospect, has Dr. Fate shown up in the DCU? Yes, he was in Black Adam.
Yes,
And he was
of course.
everyone's favorite part.
Yeah, no shit. And that is one of the reasons why I like Black Adam enough. It wasn't perfect, but I liked it enough.
Okay.
And my whole thought prior to hearing that they've pulled the plug on The Rock's plans, and likely the Justice Society, the way it presented, was I'm like, well, all right, they killed off Dr. Fate, but much like Reverse Flash, we could see him show up in movies from a different part of his timeline.
True.
And still exist. Because Pierce Brosnan was amazing.
It was so good. Or they'll get the younger Dr. Fate. You know, like it's easy enough.
Sure.
You know,
that's true.
But
the helmet's still there.
The helmet's still there. But yeah, Hawkman was great. Fun. I think it's safe to assume that all of Black Adam is an Elseworlds movie. Like it is not in the universe. Similarly, like Constantine 2, I know that they were like, I think that's still being in production, and I'm like, really?
With Keanu?
With Keanu, Constantine 2. They were saying they're gonna make that. Yeah. Oh yeah, big time. And here's the thing: after the hype from the Flash movie, I bet we get a Batman 3 redo. Like I bet we get like they call Tim Burton and he's like, I won't make it, but I'll produce it. We'll do another Batman, and they'll take like Batman Triumphant, or they'll do some other, like, you know, in their universe, Elseworlds titled Batman requel, like a Superman Returns, but with Michael Keaton Batman.
Well, maybe we'll get a Dark Knight Returns, and given that Keaton is the right age for it.
I know that what's it called? They could do Dark Knight Returns, and I know I've heard rumors they were going to do like a Batman Beyond. I'd take a Batman Beyond.
I'd love that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that Nick thinks that maybe Michael Keaton will be Thomas Wayne Batman. Could be.
No,
you don't know.
I don't know, but I guarantee it's not.
Yeah, I kind of feel that they really want to lean into.
They want you to
alternate universes and alternate Bruce Wayne.
They want old guys to go in and go, yay!
Hi, I'm one of those old guys.
I want to see him be Batman. I think it's Bruce.
You know, and listen, Tim Burton, there are goofy parts of those movies that don't hold up.
Hardcore.
I do think that Keaton's portrayal was very genuine.
Yeah.
And truly, even in Batman Returns, when he rips off the rubber mask and he's just being real heartfelt with Selena, and he's just like, let's just go home.
One of those,
like, and it's such a beautiful moment.
It is. No, him and Pfeiffer are magic. Their scene in the in the fireplace room is so good. Them on the dance floor is incredible. Yes. Like every scene they have together is magic. It's such a good pairing, which means when you make your requel of Batman 3, Catwoman can be in it.
Wouldn't that be
because
great?
We know Michelle Pfeiffer can do it in Ant-Man 3. Come on.
Jesus, no. And I haven't seen the new Ant-Man movie, but I really want to see Janet running around being the Wasp.
She's in it a lot.
That's good to know.
That's all. I don't want to ruin it. I did. I saw it yesterday.
Tell me what you thought.
It's fine.
Okay. That was my attitude last year with Doctor Strange 2, where I'm like, all right.
Yeah. I think that's the period we're in, is the like, oh, it was fun. I will genuinely say I had a fun time watching it. The movie could have used another pass at the dialogue. Like, there's a moment where Ant-Man has a monologue, kinda, and I'm just kind of like, that's clunky. Like, that's too clunky. But John,
do you think they had to, or they felt they had to over-explain?
No, they didn't over-explain. And they were very proud of what they could. Like, I know everybody was like, "This looks like Spy Kids 3D, Shark Girl and Lava Girl, or whatever." But it looks better than it did in the trailer. Like, they cleaned up a lot of it. But they're very proud of it. They're like, "Look at what we can create. Look at the quantum realm. Look at it." And I'm like, "All right, I'm looking at it." And they don't waste any time. Like, we just get into the where there's like, movie, let's go.
You're killing me, man.
Right? Like,
this is why I like talking to you, dude.
Yeah. It's just like, I'm looking. It's fun, like, yeah, all right. But like, there are a couple moments that they're very proud of that I'm like, you don't need to be that proud of it. But
The Weeze asks, is it better than Black Adam?
I liked it better than Black Adam. Black Adam is a more direct movie. You know, Black Adam's more straightforward. You know, like there's no question what that movie is about or who the protagonist wants to be, and and where it's going. But obviously, Ant-Man 3 is the third in it's actually the fifth in a series of Ant-Man appearances / movies, and Black Adam was like an origin story. But it's apples and oranges. They're two completely different movies. One's dealing with like a powerhouse blockbuster ego maniac, and the other one is like a part of a machine that doesn't care who. It's the third recasting of Cassie Lang. You know what I mean? They don't care. They don't care who's in these movies. So
What do you mean? Wait a minute.
What was it? There's the little girl Cassie.
Oh, I see. Cassie Lang. Yes.
There's the slightly grown up version from Endgame, and then there's the new one in this one. Like, come on.
That's fine. You're right. It is a machine. No,
right?
And I love The Rock, and I'm sorry that whatever happened between him and Warner's didn't work out. He is a guy that they have been pining for to do a Black Adam movie for like 15 years.
Yep.
And obviously The Rock has a very heavy schedule.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he finally made it. That said, I also think, and I want to know your opinion of this, that expectation that these movies need to make close to $1 billion.
That needs to stop.
It's insane.
That needs to stop. As they need to start like mitigating circumstances. Like, there's no reason for Ant-Man 3 to cost $250 million. There's no reason for Black Widow to be $250 million. Like, Black Widow should be a mid-budget action movie, like spy movie. Like,
look at the budget of the first Deadpool movie,
right?
And that should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, but Deadpool did. I think it made $1 billion, or at least it was close enough.
It did, but they, they made it for under $100 million. It was like only $70 million to make.
Right. But they made the $1 billion, and that's the thing. That's the dragon they're chasing. They all want to make $1 billion because they think it's like
unrealistic.
It's unrealistic to expect every movie to make $1 billion, and you can't sustainably build that into your budget unless you make an Endgame or a Spider-Man Endgame.
But even if they did,
yeah,
we would get tired of it.
Yes.
It's the problem. Again, I keep bringing it back to Star Trek.
Yeah.
But Discovery, every season is like, the universe is on the line. And it's like, fuck you. No, it's not.
Can it not be? Like,
right.
Because I know it's not going to be blown up. Like, you can't have the world blow up at the end unless the movie's about the world blowing up at the end.
Well, and again, it's like fool me once, as you said earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
it's come for it again. Man. I can't. But no, they need to. Marvel is a leader and should try and bring back the mid-budget action movie.
Agreed.
Or they need to start going like, it's okay, $500 million. Like, it's okay.
Right.
Like, it's okay to make
$300 million is okay.
Yeah.
And let's not spend more than $50 million. You might know or may not know because you're a fan of the original cast Star Trek movies.
Yeah.
The first movie was like $40 million. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that for most of the time they were going to make a new TV series.
Yeah.
And they just rolled that money into the budget for the 79 motion picture.
Yeah.
Harv Bennett comes in and says, I can do this on a shoestring because I've been doing it on TV.
Right.
And they had these reasonably budgeted bottle movies where most of the action happens on the ship. Yes, they have special effects.
Sure.
But not to the extent of the motion picture.
Yeah.
And they made money.
Yeah.
And they made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's what you need. You need that budget-conscious producers. I also think, unfortunately, and this is about the movie business in general, COVID fucked things up for movies.
Yeah.
Really hard.
Yeah.
And you've got all these people that have nice home entertainment systems and are like, I'll wait. I'll wait 6 months, 3 months.
Most of them didn't want to go to the movies anyway. Like,
right.
The fact is, these studios have, they've normalized the $1 billion blockbuster. They have become too big for their britches when it comes to like production. And they're also trying to normalize things that shouldn't be normalized. Like, you've bankrupted yourself making streaming services that no one asked for and are hemorrhaging money every single year when you had a good thing going. I always go back to this. I know people are sick of hearing about it, but like, I'm telling you, like, when you can find the like origin point of like why things are going bad in a particular area, like you have to shine a light on it, because like that's the only way we're going to get change. Like, Netflix is not a production company. Netflix is a distribution company.
You're
like,
right.
They became a production company
Yes.
because they lost their distributions. Like, but
everybody wanted to jump into the streaming game for themselves.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, you can't like, but the reason why Netflix even became a powerhouse at all is because they had these deals with real studios, and all they did was distribute.
Yeah.
And when they lost all those distributions, they had to start using the money that they had made on a thing that no longer exists, which is their distributions, to make production. And they're not a production house. Just like Marvel Studios makes movies, not shows, and they don't know how to make shows, or at least they didn't. And I would argue that they still kind of don't. But they there's also this kind of like, even though we have like Better Call Sauls and True Detectives and all these other shows that are like that are great, like good, that are better than cinema sometimes. It's few and far between. And there is still an animosity between movies and TV. And people are like, I didn't get, like, Liam Neeson, famously, despite the fact that he does have a cameo in one of those Star Wars shows, has said, I'm a movie star. I'm not going to be in a show. And it's like, yeah, well, one day on green screen, I'll take the obscene amount of money. I'll take the budget of Taken 3 to be in one scene in Obi-Wan. But like, one shot in Obi-Wan. But he's like, I'm a movie star. I don't do shows.
But he's an exception. Look at Harrison Ford and how much he's working in the streaming business now. And also, I want to address, and forgive me, Sal, I'll finish your thought.
No. Just like the people in the production aspect of the Marvel Studios, they're in the same boat. You got people who are making movies, who've been making these movies for like, 3 to 10 years, who are like, I have to make a show now? I don't make shows. I'm in the movie business.
Jodie Foster has had that attitude.
Oh, sure.
For over 10 years. I agree. Yeah. Tevye says something. And again, man, Tevye, forgive me, but you're pushing my buttons. And I love it that you're doing this, man. Yeah. But you're like, well, how did Top Gun Maverick make $1 billion? Well, we all know. And also, by the way, as first of all, Michael Reed says, it was a combination of a good, well-directed movie that has nostalgia.
Yeah.
Agreed. But also, that's an outlier.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, not every movie makes $1 billion.
Look at when I saw Black Adam, it was the first time in over a year that I had been to the theater, and I looked at what else was on the marquee, and I'm like, I don't want to see that. 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 Or I'll wait 4 months and see it on streaming. I'll wait 6 months and see it on cable. And that's the problem for 90% of the movies that are being put out.
Yeah.
The Marvel movies and Top Gun Maverick, those are outliers. Yeah, and again, as Sal said, these studios are chasing this impossible ghost of, God, even Bros, the gay comedy that came out.
Yeah, Bros.
And you saw the producer who was really mad that it didn't do better in the box office. And it's like, there might be a segment of the audience that is thrilled that movie exists,
absolutely,
but doesn't want to watch it,
or doesn't want to go to see it.
What's that?
Or doesn't want to go see it.
They'll see that's it when the thing, man. And it's like, and that's the problem with movies in general. We've been indoctrinated now because of Netflix and all the other streamers that I don't need to see the big rom-com on a giant screen.
No.
I'll wait.
No, and comedy's another like really tough. Like, it's a tough racket. Like, the comedy movies are supposed to be super cheap. It's so subjective. You're spending like $40 million. You're really spending like $8 to $10 million to tell the same jokes for like 90 minutes. There's actually a rule of thumb about comedies where it's like it can't be more than 2 hours because no one's going to sit through a comedy for 2 hours. I mean, like, no, it's Top Gun Maverick is. it was well made and a lot of hype. There was a lot of talk about it before the pandemic. Tom Cruise is the star of it. It is also, it's not an unknown quantity. Like there's a lot of different moving factors. That's why I don't really address it. But Top Gun, Avatar 2, I would never have assumed that Avatar 2 would be the number 4.
Sal, I was saying the same thing. I thought for sure that it had been too long.
We'd been done.
And it wasn't going to do well.
Yeah. And I was wrong.
Good that it did. Great.
Yeah, and you know why it did well? Because it was different. Like it's been so long that it is completely different, but it also, you remember going to see it and having a different or unique experience. And you have to see this thing, right? I mean, like, I got to see where this is going. It's been 10 years or whatever. How could I possibly miss watching these Blue Cats do whatever the hell they're going to do? Well, I'd watch the hubris of James Cameron on screen. Plus, it's James Cameron and he hasn't made anything since the last one. So, there's a lot of like different elements to that. Plus, like it's a different audience. We're talking to each other. We're like, I don't care who I piss off in this room full of people I emailed, but in the real world, like we all thought it was fun to see, Red Wing pop off of Falcon in one of the movies. The audience goes, why is he calling it Red Wing? Like the audience doesn't know what's going on. And they don't care either.
No.
Like maybe they care a little bit. I remember very vividly seeing X2 X-Men United in the theater and the Phoenix allusion, like the silhouette under the water. Right. And most of the audience I went with was like confused. They were like, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at. And the audience that I was with, my crew I was with, and it wasn't my crew from Jersey. I saw it in another state with different people. They were like, all right, you're the comic book guy. What am I looking at?
Sure.
They're a bird. And they don't know, and they don't want, and
they don't want to know, or like they're like, all right.
Well,
whatever.
you know what? My joke about that is I always go, well, all right. You want to know what that is? Well, it all starts with the dethroned queen of the Shi'ar Empire named Elandra, and they go, shut up. I don't want to hear it. And well, all right. Let me at least explain to you the M'Krun crystal, and they're like, get the hell away from me. All I want to know is why she's a bird. That's why Avatar 2 did well and Top Gun Maverick did well, but Ant-Man 3 probably won't make $1 billion. Like, yeah, it's unsustainable, but it's also like, it's asking a lot. And we're in a weird place where like, Disney can fail, and we've seen them a lot. Like Disney was almost destroyed by making an animated movie about an adaptation that nobody would have asked for called The Black Cauldron. Like, Disney's failed before, and they will again, and maybe already are. We don't know, but it won't help to try and keep a hemorrhaging streaming service that nobody asked for afloat, sustained by product you don't have any business making. And when I say don't have any business making, I mean, like, I don't want to like crap on Ms. Marvel or She-Hulk or Moon Knight. These are shows that could have been movies that I think everyone would have had the stomach for if they'd come out like 2 or 1 at a time as a movie, that instead have become this thing made by people who don't want to make TV shows. And it's just kind of like, here's this thing on this thing you got to pay for, and you got to pay more for it, by the way, and nobody asked for it, because really at the end of the day, everybody just wants to pay $9 for Netflix and not have to go anywhere. Like the reality, our default as human beings is I want to pay $9 for Netflix, and I don't want to go through 17 different apps. I just want to go to one thing and watch it. That's why malls existed. That's why cable existed. That's why Netflix was making any money. And I think like the only way that these people are going to learn is by failing hard, losing trillions of dollars, and just and eating crow. And they're not going to do it until they do. Like Marvel's not going to learn they need to make Blade $75 million, because like, why would Blade be $200 million? Why would Blade be $200 million?
Right.
Like, by the way, I because it's about a guy who kills vampires. Vampires are the cheapest, easiest horror monster in the world. They look like you, but they have fangs. And you don't even show most of the time.
Look at the Blumhouse model of making inexpensive movies that make a profit and that horror fans love.
Yeah, exactly. They're cheap. They're cheap. They just look like us. They just, blah. That's all they do. And then have the guy like swoosh a sword. It's like, especially the worst of it is when you pitch an idea. And I hate to use this example because Dredd didn't make any money. Dredd cost too much, as it turns out, and it didn't make enough. And that's a real shame. And I think if Dredd had come out,
that's a great movie.
Dredd is a great movie. And if Dredd had come out friggin' 3 years ago, it would have made $1 billion.
Agreed.
Or it would have made $500 million.
Or at the very least, the European audience that
Yeah.
is used to Dread
Right.
would have supported it much more.
Well,
No, I love that movie. That's a great
Dread
movie.
is amazing, but like you do a movie, you pitch a Dread, you pitch a Blade movie. He's trapped in a thing. You know, he goes into a castle and he gets underground and there's a cave in and he's in a nest of vampires. And you team up with somebody who can be killed by vampires. You know what I mean? Like you team up with like, you know, a young boy or you know, maybe like Kate Bishop. You know what I mean? Like you just pick somebody and you go, he's with them. And so now he's like, well, I can't just wait or, you know, kill my way out of here. I got to protect this person. And so you got this movie that's like 75, 80 million bucks. It'll make $500, $700 million. You get your money back. You've created Blade as a franchise. Everybody's happy. And you got a dope movie everybody remembers. You know, like everybody's theory about what happened in Ant-Man 3 was wrong. And they were wrong, not because they shot for the moon, but because it made too much sense. You know, people were really like reaching for the moon when it came to like thinking, oh, well, obviously, you know, the beacon from Shang-Chi is going to be the beacon from the quantum realm because both Shang-Chi and Cassie Lang said beacon. And, you know, the rings around Kang's fortress look like rings that the Mandarin had. And no. And not like it was something else, just no.
Okay.
And so it's just, you know, and just apply that to every theory you have about Ant-Man 3. Because, and you know, people know what they want to see. And some of these ideas are just cheaper to do and they're easier to construct. You don't need to do a whole thing. You know, Ant-Man 3 could have been 30 minutes shorter if you just kind of put stuff. And it's not really that bad. Like but again, I'm not like crapping on Ant-Man 3. I actually enjoyed it, but like, you know,
well, like you said, it was all right. It was fine.
It was fine. You know, but it could have knocked my socks off. And you know, and I'm not expecting all these things to knock my socks off. Hell, I'm not even expecting Marvel movies to knock my socks off anymore. And you know, but you know, but they need to normalize the mid-budget. They need to be satisfied with less than
a couple $100 million.
Yeah. They need to be satisfied, and they're not going to be until they fail, because the new normal in business is unprecedented growth every single year, which is impossible to achieve.
But that said, as you know how the studios work, they got to go to the banks to get that money to make those. And certainly Paramount has had that trouble regarding Star Trek, where it's like, we want to do this. And the banks are like, yeah, but all those JJ movies, except for the first one, underperformed and lost money.
Star Trek should not cost $200 million.
No.
The only reason to make a Star Trek movie is to make a 2-part episode for the audience. Like, that is why they make them. Like, the original series was a phenomenon. And so the movies were capitalizing on the phenomenon of they only made one show and an ill-fated cartoon. That's it.
Great cartoon, by the way.
But if you want to see them, you go see the movie.
Right.
But if you want Star Trek, now, I got 9 options. Not to mention the old stuff that is better.
Agreed.
So why am I going to make a $300 million Star Trek movie when I have 9 options that are cheaper, easier, and in my house?
Not only on Paramount Plus, but also, as you know, because of things like that Hero and Icons channel, the sister channel to MeTV. It's like, guess what, New Trek? You are competing with the best
real Trek
Star Trek stuff 6 nights a week.
Yeah,
6 nights a week.
We have Pluto. Pluto TV has a Star Trek channel.
Of course they do. Well, you know, that is CBS Paramount.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like, you're competing with me watching the best episodes of the original best series.
Yes.
Every day. Why would I ever watch something that's disappointing that undercuts what I enjoyed when I could just watch the real thing? But Star Trek, you know, now it's a niche product. It's a fan base.
But it always was, though.
But it always was, exactly.
And further, it was an exercise in science fiction, but also morality plays and asking debatable questions.
Right.
And they presented both sides with equal strength.
Yeah. Well,
and that's what's missing
sometimes
today. New Star Trek is a polemic for this is the way things should be.
Yeah,
it's like,
sometimes
you're
Real
not
Trek
wrong.
would go, this is really the way it should be. Like, this is, I
But
mean, like,
again, well, I always point to the Khan eugenics war
oh yeah.
example. And right now, the modern audience, and I hope I'm not repeating myself in this conversation,
Mhm.
but the idea of the eugenics and genetic manipulation,
Yeah.
younger audiences, and also it seems, based on my experience, that many of the LGBTQ community are like, when they see Strange New Worlds, and they're like, well, the Federation is racist against augments because just like they might be with a gay community or an
Mm.
LGBTQ community. And I'm like, yes, but you got to remember when this was created.
Right.
It was 20 years after World War II, created by World War II veterans
Yeah.
who saw the horrors of the Nazis
Right.
playing with eugenics. It happened here in America with the Tuskegee experiments.
Right. Right.
These are bad ideas.
Yeah.
And while I agree it's fair to have the debate, do not just tell me, well, this is the way it should be.
Right.
You have to present that other side of the argument of,
Yeah.
these aren't people. These are people that were genetically enhanced to be stronger, to be smarter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like playing with God in a different way. Again, this is my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's why it does frustrate me that New Trek is always much more polemic than, all right, let's discuss this and you judge for yourself.
Yeah. I don't even give New Trek the time to find out what they're trying to like teach me. It's so noisy and it's so antithetical to what Star Trek to me is and should be. Like Star Trek, so to speak, like if you're making a Star Trek movie, let's say you're like, okay, we're getting together, we're making a Star Trek movie. It should be essentially a slightly more expensive version of the show. Like, I think that you would actually appeal to more, you would make more money. And if you just kept your expectations low, your budget lower, and just made a movie that is for the audience that's there to see it, that's going to show up. Stop trying to trick everyone into becoming a Trekkie. It hasn't worked since the 60s, and it's not going to work now. So just make a Star Trek movie that's like $18 million.
Yeah.
And it's mostly about like a morality problem, like just an issue, like the best issue. Like everybody loves the Borg episodes, and I'm always like, the Borg are like the most obvious thing. Like the Borg are always like the most frustrating thing for me because they're the most bad guy thing you could possibly throw at Star Trek, which is also for me frustrating for Star Trek because like Klingons, were the bad guys, but then you got into like some subtlety and be like, oh, well, some of them are like contemplative. Some of them like understand, like Chancellor Gorkin, or Worf's great grandfather, whatever the hell his line. I'm talking about Star Trek 6, but like stop trying to make everybody into Star Trek fans. And same with Star Wars. Star Wars is Wizard of Oz. Stop trying to make everybody into a Star Wars fan. Stop niching it. Like, Star Wars is only $1 billion empire when you're making 3 movies and they're Campbellian plays, right? Like, it's not like X-Wing novels and Tales from Jabba's Palace books by Kevin J. Anderson were flying off the shelves because legions of people wanted to know more about Star Trek. It's not like everybody needed to know about the Truce at Bakura so that they could really get more Star Wars. Star Wars is American, worldwide Wizard of Oz fantasy plays that everyone can get into and watch and enjoy, that is like translated into every known language on the planet. And then if you're a special kind of nerd, there's video games, there's books, there's comic books, there's action figures, there's collectibles, there's t-shirts. That's for them. Honestly, Star Wars should be just simple ass, good guy, bad guy, 3 movie pictures. And then the nerd stuff is the shows, the cartoons and stuff like that, where you get really into the nitty gritty. How does it work? Like part of the appeal of Clerks is that they talked about minutia in Star Wars, that the joke is they would never address those questions.
Of course.
But now we have so much Star Wars that we have names for the guy who installed the toilet main in the Death Star. You know, like, it's no longer, jokes are real now, you know, and we don't need to answer those questions. We don't, and even if we're going to seek to answer those questions, don't charge people, or don't make a movie that costs $300 million to tell them that answer, because it's not worth the money.
Don't give the answer in one of those ancillary novels, like Laura Dern's character, and it's like, who the fuck is that? Right. Oh, she and Leia has this this relationship, and it's covered in this book.
That's the perfect place to put it. That's the perfect place to put it, because like, if you care, go get it.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, man. I want at least a line of.
Oh, you want to know who that is? So I mean, like, yeah, she needed. Well, I'm not even gonna get into her. I'm not gonna get into that. I'm not gonna touch that.
God bless you, son.
But she is like, but those characters, that movie didn't understand the assignment. Right. And neither did Force Awakens. Force Awakens like understood enough to make it like open-ended and generic, but they also didn't like telegraph what you should kind of know what the third act is going to be by the first movie, because it is a myth. You know what I mean? Like, it's a myth. It's a fable. It's a parable. It's a concept that was transferred through our genomes to each other. We know what's going to happen to the bad guy at the end. Like, that's all you need. You don't need to like get into it. And when you do need to get into it, don't make it cost hundreds of millions of dollars. You want to answer who Laura Dern's character's like lineage is, you put that in a novel, you put that in a video game where the nerds will look for it, and I get it. But like, don't expect to make $1 billion off of like, we're finally going to tell you like the origin of the Ewoks. Nobody cares.
I hate the fucking Ewoks.
I love the Ewoks, but only because I'm like, you know,
because you were a kid, man.
I was a kid.
Right.
You know, they're cute.
That's all right. You know, and I love Warwick, the actor.
Davis, yeah, he's
Warwick
great.
Davis. Thank you.
Willow, yeah.
You know, yeah, I know, yeah. Well, although I got to admit, again, we're back in fantasy.
Yeah,
Willow TV series. Don't give a shit.
I didn't even. I wanted to watch it, and I heard from like every side imaginable that it's a terrible show. And I was like, okay. And that saves me time, because I watch things for a living. I read things for a living. I talk about stuff for a living.
Amen.
And there's just not enough hours in the day.
100%.
You know, and if I cared, like if I loved Willow, I would still watch the show just to judge for myself. But if I don't really care, then I'm not going to even bother. You know, like I get the Dark Crystal. Never watched a single moment of that new show. I appreciate it. I worship Jim Henson. I appreciate all that stuff, but he's gone. And the movie was really boring, and I'm not going to be able to watch your show because I didn't even like the movie. You know, unless my channel is like Dark Crystal Explained, then I'm not going to watch your show.
Are you watching The Last of Us?
Yeah, it's amazing.
I am not.
I love it. It's fantastic. It's
and
just
I know,
TV.
And everyone's gushing about it.
Yeah,
you know what?
It's good. It's just a good show. But like, you know, it's and what's great about it is it's the video game. Like, they're not,
and that's what I've heard.
You know,
that's wonderful.
It's the game, and it embellishes some parts, and it deviates from others, but like that's okay. But
sure.
but just,
you know what I like that's new on Sci-Fi Channel?
Yeah,
The Ark.
I've heard of The Ark.
It's poor man's Galactica from this without the Cylons, in terms of
okay.
All right, we left our planet, we've got limited resources, and there's a murder mystery going on the ship.
Okay,
and cool. It's Dean Devlin created it. I also
Nice.
appreciate. It's shot in Belgrade in Eastern Europe.
Oh, okay.
So you've got an interesting blend of new actors
Oh, cool.
and accents,
cool.
frankly.
Yeah.
I really, it blew me away. I watched the pilot.
Nice.
And was like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
So.
No, I just, I'm
but like you said, too much to watch.
Too much
to watch, too much to read.
Too much. And I do think
Sal,
critical
most
mass.
of the time, I'm reading what my guests are going to do a couple days before
to prepare for the interview.
Catch up. Yeah, it's catch up.
Right. Yeah. No, it's I'm very thankful. I'm very indebted to our audience, because I only read what I want, and I trust my wife to tell me when it's really worth reading. And and like, even when we have a show on Mondays where we just talk about new books, but I don't read everything and then go, this is horrible, and then just say all the things that I had no interest in reading and then review them. I'll only read what I felt like reading.
Of course.
And so, and the show still ends up being about an hour and a half long. So, I have the luxury of being able to say no to certain things. Like I'm able to, still talk about comic books, but not have to read every single comic book.
Of course.
And it's the same thing, like these movies, like, we have a review show. Obviously, Ant-Man 3 is going to be the focus of our review show.
Well, of
but,
course.
but like, it isn't, I don't know, like the new Harrison Ford TV series. Like, I don't have to watch everything.
The Apple one, the Apple TV, or
right. Anything on Apple TV, because I don't have it and I'm not going to pay.
Oh, God, but I don't want you to spend more money as far as getting another streamer.
Yeah.
For All Mankind is such a great NASA show of an alternate universe, and it's the Star Trek prequel.
Yeah.
That it should have been, because you could see the way this alternate universe plays out ultimately leads to the Federation and Starfleet.
That's cool.
And it's Ron Moore who killed it on Trek and Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
And a lot of former Galactica and Trek writers are on the show. Yeah. It's, and it's fascinating beyond the story they're telling, how the other events of the 70s, 80s, and 90s played out.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, you got Gary Hart managed to become president. Ted Kennedy in the 70s, because the first episode, the Russians beat us to the moon.
Right. Yes.
And everything spirals after that.
Yes.
And it's fascinating. They've got moon bases. They've got, as Richard Branson is trying to build, hotels in space in the 90s. It's fascinating.
Yeah. I love that. I love the idea of, of alternate history. I just think it's really, it's a fascinating concept, and when it's done really well, it's really engaging. Like, it's really interesting. So that's really cool.
Yeah, dude, you can see me yawning, and also it's 11:30 your time. I'm sure I'm keeping you from Tiff. You've been awesome, dude.
She's playing Animal Crossing. Oh, okay.
This has been great.
Yeah,
and my God, Sal, this is your audience showing up. For this, honestly, man,
it's a blend.
I got my guys and women and everything that are watching.
Exactly,
but it is lovely that your people are coming out, and they all seem to really enjoy what we've been doing.
Good.
So sooner than later, let's do it again.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No,
maybe down. After this clump of new movies come out.
Yes, that's gonna
be a reason to come back.
It's gonna be really exciting. I hope that it can help to recapture some of the enthusiasm, because we've no shortage of emotion surrounding these movies, but we are experiencing a dearth of just genuine being like, yay, this is gonna be really exciting. Like, I'm really excited to see this. Like, I kind of tried to have Ant-Man 3 where I was like, Jonathan Majors, like, he's a really good actor. I loved him in Loki. I think he's gonna, and Lovecraft Country. Like, I hope he's really good. By the way, he does. He steals the show. He's amazing as Kang. Like, I can't wait to see more Kang. But I was like, man, this could really like change things for Scott. Like, I heard that they really wanted to make, like this one, like kind of like, we've been making silly Ant-Man movies, but like this is Scott's chance. He's kind of the only one that made it, so like let's give him something. And I'm like, yeah. So I kind of tried to be like, this is phase 5. Yeah, let's see what's going on. But it was like, I was kind of trying to hype myself up as opposed to the movie hyping me up, by itself. So I hope DC is able to recapture, because they deserve it, because it's like, when you have a plan and you're executing it well, you deserve to at least have your fair shot. And DC deserves at least one more out of the 3 or 4 they've got.
Listen, man, I think Gunn has proved himself with the movies he's made, in both universes.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, this is great. And his 6-minute video, I saw was excitement and passion.
Yeah. I'm not gonna. I've been burned too many times on the Cult of Personality and like people who are nerds who are making things and then find out like, oh, they had a secret like dungeon where they were pulling fingernails out of people's hands. Like, but I'm, but good luck to them. Hope it works out. Just hope that Superman movie's really good.
I just like that idea of, man, you make a lot of great stuff. I also have a sex dungeon.
Yeah.
All right.
Of course you do. Because you all do, don't you? You just, I hope he's, I just so I'm not like in gun we trust. I'm just more like, oh yeah, he seems like he has a good head. He seems like he has a plan, and I hope he executes that plan before he's taken down by himself.
They tried.
Oh, I know.
They tried 15 years ago when he had his snarky, list of heroes and villains that he'd want to fuck or whatever.
Oh, I know.
And I was so angry at the people that wanted him fired, and it's like, you people can't take a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah,
relax.
I honestly didn't even investigate it that far. I don't know the full details. I'd rather not, to be honest with you.
Well, and it's wise, by the way, because it's in the rearview mirror,
right?
And all the guy has done since then. It was either before or after the first Guardians movie.
I think it was either during or after Guardians 2, because he got to do Guardians 2.
You're right.
And they got fired.
Yeah,
and
you're right.
And thankfully he did, because now he's an executive. Like,
it was bullshit. It was just bullshit. And
it worked out for he would. I'm sure he would thank whoever did that, because he's an executive at a movie studio now as a result.
Absolutely, and working with our friends like Tom King.
Oh yeah,
and that really delighted me, was how much he gushed about working with Tom.
Yeah.
And we know
really
that Tom
cool.
gets it. We know it firsthand.
Yeah, King is a good guy. He gets it, and he loves the medium. The thing is, like, you can never accuse him of not like having passion and love for comics, and whether you don't like his books or not, you can't like deny they're not well made. Like you might not like Strange Adventures, but like you can't deny that it's not well written.
Oh,
and well drawn. Those those powerhouses. He gets the best people.
Doc and Mitch, absolutely.
Doc and Mitch.
Clay
Jorge Fornes, Clayman. Like, it's just, let's go.
Yeah,
man. It's nuts. But thank you for having me, man. Yeah,
and of course the aforementioned Vic Waselvely. If we didn't mention her, we were gushing about Supergirl too.
Supergirl, yeah,
it did. True. Sal, you killed it again. Seriously.
Oh no,
and I knew you would. It's so funny. King South Cal is like, I've been telling you for years to talk to Sal. I'm like, Sal and I've been talking for years.
Yeah,
I'm not breaking to you, man.
Yeah,
and it's great.
There's older episodes with me on. I'm always been there.
I'm sorry, buddy.
I'm on older episodes. You could find me there.
100%. And truly, man, I love that we're friends, and it's nothing but mutual admiration.
Yeah.
Promote your. I mean, again, this is a lot of your crowd, but promote again for the Word Balloon audio audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your other podcast.
Right? Yeah, I'm so lucky to be on Word Balloon. Thank you so much. If you are interested in anything I have to say after all this, then you can check out youtube.com/comicpop. That's where we do our flagship show Back Issues we talked about earlier on the show. But we also have another channel called youtube.com/comicpopreturns. We just picked a name. I was just like, I just wanted to have the same name, but like with
some branding.
Yeah, it's branding. But that's where we have our podcast, where we get into this kind of nitty gritty stuff. So subscribe to both channels, and you'll get a well-rounded understanding of like what the whole enterprise is about. Trust me, you will like the other personalities just as much, if not better. Because I associate with my betters, so trust me, you will like Tiffany.
Well,
they're great.
With the exception of your wife, I'll disagree. I like Benny, and I like your other co-hosts and stuff. And Tiff is great. But no, man, I know who to go to when I want to have a great conversation. So whether it's on the air or off the air.
Appreciate it, man.
Are you doing any audio?
I mean, all the podcasts that we produce, like Elseworlds Exchange and Off the Rack, and my show with Josh Williamson, All Stars, those are audio based. Well, they're video based, and then I turn them into audio.
Sure.
And those are available on Spotify. We also have I have a commuter show that I don't do nearly as much as I should, called Wake Up with Comic Pop, where I just I've been making these videos, which are not really videos, they're audio. It's all audio. Where I kind of like cover the news a little bit for about like 45 minutes and 30 to 45 minutes. It's just as long as your commute should be, if not longer than your commute should be. I hope your commute isn't 35 minutes. But I release it at like 5 a.m, so that like you can download it before you leave for work. But I haven't I missed the last couple of weeks, and I gotta get back into it. It's just because I'm like, I'm tearing through all these different things, and I'm hurting my voice. I'm like, something has to give. I have to be like, all right.
Well, and also you're doing columns for CBR.
It's true, but that's another one that is very much. I'm negligent in that regard. I need to do more of those. It's been about a month or two since the last time I did one, and I know they want one, so I should probably get on that soon.
Very good, man.
Yeah.
Sal Crivelli, as always, thank you
Thank
for
you,
coming
sir.
on. Everybody, thanks for watching. The audio will be coming tomorrow. Sunday night, Word Balloon Live. We'll be doing Oh Yeah Trek Watch. We're going to discuss episode 1 of Picard season 3 with Franco and Mitch and Wayne. I hope you'll join us for that. Until then, thanks a lot for watching. Everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.